Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Хотите жить – бегите. Хотите жить – сдавайтесь в плен. Россия не получит новую территорию Украины. Россия присоединит себя к той катастрофе, которую она принесла на оккупированную территорию нашей страны. Оккупант заполняет могилами захваченную территорию Украины. И все больше могил на территории самой России. Ценой того, что один человек в России хочет продолжать эту войну, кто хочет войны больше, чем жизнь, вашей жизни, граждане России.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 562 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again on a Friday.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. But today is a little bit about other things going on in the world than just what's going on inside of the borders of Ukraine. NATO's here. Finally, it actually happened. We'll be getting into that breaking news here in a moment. But before we do, if I could just ask, we have actually never done this before, but I feel like tonight would be a special night to do this. Make sure to hit the like button on the stream so that way it gets promoted to more people. Because here's the thing. Tonight's news, while seeming not really that big, is pretty major. It's the first time this has ever happened in the entirety of the war, over 562 days. And we're going to be getting into it right now. NATO's here, and they're going to be holding joint exercises with the Ukrainian and Romanian navies. According to Flash News UA, the Romanian and US navies will hold multinational exercises with Ukraine from September 11th to 15th in the Black Sea and the Danube Delta. By the way, the Danube Delta is right here. So this is literally straddling, or is actually inside of, the waters of Ukraine. U.S. naval forces may possibly be in Ukrainian waters just in the next few days. That's big news, and of course, we'll be getting to a little bit more here in a moment because more information and news has been coming out today showing that NATO is not going to be playing softball, at least with what they're doing right now at the moment. They're starting to step up and do things that are a little bit more hardcore than what we've been seeing over the entirety of the war. This was also reported by the Romanian Navy's press services. The exercise will also be attended not with ships of these nations, but by military personnel of the Bulgarian and French navies, and also the British and Turkish navies. The main goal is to develop operational and tactical interoperability between the participating countries in the field of countering explosive ordnance, in particular sea mines, in order to ensure freedom of navigation. This is a fairly major progression, though. As far as everything has gone inside of the Black Sea, this is the closest we've ever seen to a NATO naval standoff with the Russian Navy. The fact that it's also occurring in a geographical location that is technically inside of Ukrainian waters is also something that is groundbreaking as well. We've never seen anything like this, the likes of which in the entire war has ever even been close to being the case. This is the first time ever that U.S. naval forces, for that matter, will have been in the Black Sea since the war began. U.S. forces have been straddling just outside of the Bosphorus and Dardanelles through the Aegean Sea for most of this war, and now U.S. naval forces are going to be right there, either in the territorial waters of Ukraine or just miles away. And that's not even talking about what else has happened that is even probably more escalatory than the U.S. Navy arriving in the area in any scale or any size. The Royal Air Force has come out with a statement today saying that they have been giving in-air escorts to civilian shipping going into Ukrainian ports and stopping the Russians from attacking the ships. This, of course, came out from Nexta today, and according to the statement, British, well, let me just read y'all what the Telegraph put out. UK planes protecting Ukraine ships from Russian attack after the grain deal collapse. The RAF is conducting patrols over the Black Sea to deter the Russians from carrying out attacks on civilian vessels carrying grain exports. This is, of course, nothing that grand. I'm sure many of y'all probably saw this coming because British aircraft and NATO aircraft that have been over the Black Sea have been escorted by British fighter jets for some while at this point, about 6 to 7 months. But this is the first time ever that we've heard that these fighter jets are not just being used to escort NATO assets over the Black Sea and to ensure that they're not harassed by the Russian Air Force, but now we're hearing that these aircraft are pretty much running escort missions over civilian ships in the Black Sea as they're heading into Ukraine and trying to deter the Russians from targeting and attacking the ships. This is huge.
It's kind of crazy because just yesterday it seemed like the U.S. was trying to fly their drones near Crimea to get surveillance, and they got scared off because the Russians were being very bold about it. And now they're going to go hold a naval exercise like right next to Crimea, basically. That's even bolder than drone flights.
Yeah, man, the Russians went, you see, we are going to win in the Black Sea. Check. And then some American went, checkmate. And they went, what? They went, wait a minute, that wasn't supposed to happen. But I got to say, I'm very happy to see this. Largely, this will not create an armed conflict. I have to make that clear. Of course, some people are going to be trying to make it sound like a war is going to happen in between the Western world, the United States, and Russia here within the next few days because of this. But no armed conflict is going to be coming out of this. I'm fairly certain of that. One thing that will be coming out of this, though, is a very tense standoff in between Russia and the United States, because the United States is now pushing the boundary farther than any weapon that we've ever given to Ukraine so far on what we are doing and what we've been involved in so far in the war. Not only that, but we are teaming up with the Ukrainian Navy at sea to deal with this training exercise. Now, that is probably the next level thing. That's almost direct involvement as far as the U.S. military is concerned with what has been going on in Ukraine, as we're going to be sailing our ships right alongside Ukrainian boats. They don't have any ships, really. They just have boats. But we're going to be sailing our own ships alongside them as this exercise goes on next week. We'll, of course, be reporting that when it goes down. But this is going to be a major watershed moment as far as the war is concerned, and with how the U.S. has been involved in the Black Sea, and also how all of the other NATO countries, such as Romania, Bulgaria, and Turkey, have also been involved in the Black Sea as well. The Romanians are also starting to take the drone situation over their airspace much more seriously than they have been over the past few days. Many of y'all have heard about the entire drone controversy that has been caused over the entire length of about the last week, where a Russian drone exploded onto this little area of land just to the west of the port of Robotyne, which was then immediately pretty much flat out said that it was untrue that an attack like that had happened by the Romanians. They said that nothing had hit Romania, and then that was countered with, well, the drone did blow up in Romania, and it didn't really cause any damage, to then the Romanians said that it hit Romania, and this is a serious thing that requires some serious consideration as to what to do next. And now the Romanians have come out today, and they're saying that they are now going to be constructing mass amounts of bomb shelters in this area of Romania to prepare for future Russian attacks in case if they were to happen. According to Nexta, which also put out this news bulletin, Romania will create a network of bomb shelters and an air threat warning system to protect the population from Russian attacks on Ukraine. In areas bordering the south of the Odessa region, Romanian authorities will create a network of bomb shelters and a system for alerting the population about air threats. This decision was made by the National Committee for Emergency Situations, Press reports. On Wednesday, the Romanian Ministry of Defense confirmed that the debris of the Russian drone, which attacked the Izmail port on Odessa in the Odessa region on September 4th, fell on the territory of Romania. Previously, the Romanians flat out denied this. The NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg said there is no evidence that Russia deliberately shelled Romanian territory, which is also true. It appears that the drone was actually shot down by Ukrainian air defense and then ended up crashing and exploding onto Romanian territory, but nevertheless, it was over Romanian airspace, which is a violation of their sovereignty. After withdrawing from the grain...
Does that even really add up, though? Because if it was unintentional, and it was something that happened by accident. It's not going to happen on a routine basis. So why are they building all these bomb shelters, creating a network of warning systems and all these like really complicated things if it's something that's like a one-off accident and it's not intentional?
That's a very good point, actually. And I think the reason why they're doing that, Matthew, is because I think Romania is getting into a mindset of preparing for war. And of course, I'm saying this right coming off of the breaking news of the night that U.S. naval forces are going to be off the coast of Romania here for the first time since the war began next week, and that probably won't create any kind of an actual war with the Russians. But producing bomb shelters and creating an extensive air alert system, all of those things will be semi-permanent, probably lasting for several years in that area, is showing that the Romanian Emergency Situations Committee, not the committee, but the committee is seeing something that we're not seeing, or is thinking something that isn't being told to the public at this moment. But regardless, it is good to know that they're going to be trying to prepare for something to happen in the future. But also, another thing that I think would be very prudent of the Romanians is to request the U.S. units that are inside of Romania. From what we understand, the 101st Airborne is still there to set up their air defense systems on the Romanian border, so that way if Russian aircraft or drones fly over their airspace, they can then promptly be shot down by U.S. air defenses that would be set up inside of Romania. That's what I would do. Of course, I think these are also very prudent steps as well, constructing the bunkers, creating the air alert system. But I also think that there should be a proactive response instead of a reactive response in this, in that U.S. air defenses will be attempting to shoot down any Russian drones that try and fly into Romanian airspace. But nevertheless...
Hell, that's what NATO should do. They should give Romania defenses to put right on its border like you're saying. So that way, when an accident like that does happen, there's a strong response to it. But the truth is, NATO's scared to shoot down stuff that comes in by accident or on purpose because they're scared to piss the Russians off.
It's kind of, sort of. That's kind of what we've been seeing for the most part at the moment. But I think we should start to change that, because we're going to start changing our stance navally in the Black Sea, and now U.S. naval forces are going to boldly go to what is literally the edge of what the Russians call their own territorial waters illegally at this moment. I think we should also start to take a different approach to the violation of airspace that we've been seeing from these drones near the port of Renai and Ismail over the past few weeks, and we should start to actively shoot these drones down to start sending a message that there will be no violations of airspace or sovereignty of any NATO countries under any circumstances, even if the target is Ukrainian. That's what I think we should do, and it looks like the Romanians are moving a little bit in that direction, but we haven't seen the proactive measures taken where we will shoot the drones down. We're just reacting to the drones flying over the airspace. But moving on from all of this news in the Black Sea and just these small pieces, there is a big picture coming out of this, and it is the one showing that while NATO has kept a very calm response to Russian actions in the Black Sea so far, they are starting to show with their actions that things are beginning to ramp up as far as NATO is concerned in the Black Sea. The Royal Air Force escorting commercial ships to and from Ukraine in the air is something that we haven't even heard about before until today. The fact that the U.S. Navy is going to be arriving in the Black Sea in any force whatsoever is also groundbreaking as well. This is all a massive change from what we've been seeing for 562 days, and while it's not shooting down a Russian drone over Romanian airspace or anything like that, this is starting to show that NATO isn't playing the games that the Russians have been trying to play for the past few days. Now we're the ones who are going to be playing the games, and they're going to be the ones who are largely having to respond to those games. And there's a new kind of game that is going to be making its way into the Russian-occupied areas of Ukraine here in the near future. The ATACMS is on the way. More breaking news. It's just a never-ending stream of breaking news tonight. And funnily enough, all of this came out just a few hours ago. But according to a U.S. official that told this to ABC News, the U.S. is likely to send long-range ATACMS missiles to Ukraine for the first time soon. We don't have an exact date, but this is the most definitive statement we've ever heard about the ATACMS. Up until this point, we've always heard the best answer being maybe. It's always been a maybe with these missiles. They may make it to Ukraine. They may be used in Ukraine if they're sent. we may put limitations on these missiles. Now we're hearing that they are likely going to Ukraine, which is a lot more into the realm of they will be in Ukraine than anything else. The ATACMS is also an incredibly long-range missile system as well. The missile system has a range of about, from what I remember, and let me go pull it up just to make sure, about 250 miles, if I'm correct. It may actually be about 150. So let me see if I can get an actual range on this thing. The actual range is 190 miles, right in the middle of the two estimates I just gave. 190 miles of range. If we were to say that a HIMARS was to launch that ATACMS from the city of Arikiv, it could reach down to the Kerch Bridge and hit it directly. The HIMARS or the ATACMS can hit all the way over to almost to the Kinburn Spit in the Kherson Oblast from Arikiv, and it can reach all the way over to the very border of Russia in the far reaches of Luhansk from Arikiv. The ATACMS would be able to strike literally anywhere within Russian-occupied territory in Ukraine, and at a cost of only $800,000 per missile, it is far more efficient and far more economical to use than the Scalp EG and Storm Shadow missiles that the British and French have been providing to the Ukrainians at around $2.5 to $3 million per missile. You can get 3 times the firepower for the same cost as a single Storm Shadow missile. And this is going to be a major development when confirmed and actually sent to Ukraine. We may see that the Ukrainians start to conduct deep strike attacks with these missiles far more often than they have been with the Storm Shadow and Scalp EG missiles that were provided by the French. And speaking of things that have been provided by the French and Western countries, one thing that the Russians have been provided by foreign countries is manpower, in somewhat illegal ways, apparently, because now the Cubans are conducting mass arrests inside of Cuba of the people who were sending the Cubans overseas to work in Russia and then forcing them into the Russian army. According to news and information that has been coming out, the Russians are going to be losing a little bit of manpower going on into the future. According to what we've heard today, mass arrests of recruiters for the war against Ukraine took place in Cuba. Cuban authorities arrested 17 people who were recruiting Cubans into the Russian army. They could face up to 30 years in prison, life imprisonment, or the death penalty. Because Cuba is one of the few countries.
Do you think that Cuba didn't know that they were sending the people to Russia?
Oh, they knew. They knew for sure.
Oh, of course they knew. They probably had getting a kickback from it or something, like getting paid by the Russians to do it.
Oh, yeah, you know they were. There's no doubt about it. The Cuban government did know that this was going on the entire time, but now they're going to sit there and have a little bit of that revolutionary justice, as Castro would have called it, and now they're going to start executing the people that they probably were supporting in their operations in the first place. But hey, you know what's great to hear about this is that apparently the Cubans are starting to get a little disillusioned on the government side of things with the Russian government and what's been going on in the war so far. Apparently, they're deciding that working age Cuban men are more needed inside of Cuba than they are growing sunflowers in the fields of Ukraine. So that's a fairly interesting development, one that took them a little while to grasp, but still better now than ever. So, of course, great to hear, and I really wonder what the Russian response to this is going to be. They haven't really made a response at the moment, so are they going to be violent about this, or are they not going to make a comment? Are they going to pretend like the Cubans are still completely on their side and backing them up? Who really knows? Because we haven't gotten a response from the Russians yet, and this is one of the first times we've seen a staunch Russian ally completely buck what the Russians want or need as far as the war has gone. Even the Chinese haven't gone this far to just completely smack down an entire part of their nation in conducting something in support of the war. The Chinese haven't really done it to the point of sending over volunteers to the Russian army, but they have done a couple of other small things that we have noticed over time. So, very odd to see the Cubans...
Cuba doesn't want that trouble with NATO and the U.S. They know the trouble would be much more severe than simply pissing Russia off.
Man, Cuba just wants that freaking cheese, man. They're like, man, the freaking dairy cows are dying. We gotta have that freaking cheese, man. But anyways, one thing that I gotta say is that it's wonderful to know that some of Russia's allies, although they're literally insignificant, I mean, what the hell are the Cubans really going to provide? Starving poor people? I mean, that's all they got at this point. But beyond that, it is great to know that they're no longer going to be even able to provide manpower to the Russians, and they're shutting that part of the operation down. So great to hear. Also, what's also really weird about this, and what's always just bizarre to me, is that Cuba is just 90 miles south of the United States. You know, that's always something that's so weird to me whenever we talk about the Cubans supporting the Russians, is that they are so much closer to the United States than they are to the Russian Federation. The Russian Federation is on the literal other side of the world for the Cubans, and yet they would rather ally with them than the United States. And y'all may remember back in the day, to talk a little bit about the modern situation, that the United States for a short while lifted the sanctions on Cuba and tried to warm up relationships with them. And some people thought that that was an asinine move. And looking back in hindsight, based off of the Cuban response, it was a little asinine, but it was largely going off the premise that we had taken with other communist countries like Vietnam and Poland, where we thought if we start to get some economic ties with them, maybe they'll start to move over into our direction because, you know, it'll benefit them. And then it didn't, which was a little interesting. It kind of went against the grain and also was just stupid on the Cubans' end. But nevertheless, it is weird to think that now we're watching the Cubans kind of do another reversal again as far as the Russians are concerned, and now they're going to be, I guess, kind of opting out of really supporting Russia at all in the war. But that's all we have at the moment from Cuba, but still very good news to hear, because another 70 additional Cubans per month will no longer be accessible to the Russians. Speaking of things that won't be accessible to the Russians, we have a feeling that some Russian troops on the front lines will no longer be accessible by mail or phone call coming into the near future, as the Leopard 1A5s have been spotted in the training grounds of Germany as they are now preparing to move on their way into Ukraine. You can see a couple of pictures of these Leopard 1A5 DKs, which I believe are the Danish Leopard 1A5s, and look at them go. Such a beautiful tank.
Can you believe in just a short little while, they'll also have Leopards here like we're seeing, plus also Abrams too. We'll be seeing pictures of those pop up.
Well, I actually have some unfortunate news about that here in a moment, but it was actually something that was agreed upon by both sides. But very interesting to see the Leopard ones on the training field. And I gotta say, this tank makes you just want to go grr. Oh man, I'm telling you. But anyways, we're going to be moving on from the training grounds of Germany. And since Matthew just brought up the Abrams, we're going to be moving right into our location unknowns at this moment to cover the news that we've heard today, which is a little unfortunate, but it's not the end of the world. Apparently, the Ukrainian government has been a little bit dissatisfied from, you know, what we can kind of infer from what has happened today with the rapid accelerated training programs that most of their tankers have been undergoing. While they have produced large amounts of tank crews that can field Western tanks at a very fast rate, it appears that the Ukrainian government may not entirely be satisfied with their depth of understanding of their vehicles and how to use them. And so today, on the request, and this has to be made very clear because this sounds like it's another United States stall tactic, but this was actually done on the request of the Ukrainian government, they have requested that the Abrams training cycle be increased in length, and the Abrams will arrive a little bit later than they are expected. This came out according to the Kyiv Independent today. The U.S. prolongs Abrams tank training for Ukrainian soldiers at Ukraine's request. The Pentagon prolonged the training of Ukrainian soldiers on Abrams tanks. The Voice of America reported on the 8th of September, citing U.S. Army Europe and Africa Command spokesperson Martin O'Donnell. A little bit of an
I'm calling cap on that. I'm calling cap. You tell me that Ukraine, in the midst of a very crucial counteroffensive, said, let's prolong the training so we can't get the modern tanks right now. But they're not applying the same logic to F-16s, though. Well, this sounds like some kind of way for like Ukraine to let the U.S. save face, because that doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, I mean, you know, it's what they requested, and we're taking that at face value because this did come from the Kyiv Independent. This isn't ABC News or anything. This is a Ukrainian news company that put this out, and we're largely going to have to take it at face value because I don't have any reason to not believe the Kyiv Independent. And of course, we have discredited other information sources over the war, like the Ukrainian intelligence. We largely take everything they say at arm's length because they've given us a reason to not trust them because they blew up something out of proportion and then it ended up not even happening. The Kyiv Independent hasn't done that. And so we have to take I have to take what they say news reporting wise at face value. Apparently, from what I'm taking from this, the Ukrainians have maybe noticed some shortfalls or shortcomings of tank crews that have gone under the accelerated training programs, and now they're wanting Western countries like the United States to make sure to take their time to send Ukrainian tankers through an entire full-length training course, so that way they understand the tanks they're operating forwards and backwards, and actually have time to understand how the vehicle operates. The M1A1 Abrams is probably also one of the most one of the most expected main battle tanks that will be entering Ukraine. Even the older versions of the M1 Abrams, such as the M1A1 Abrams, which is the one we will be seeing inside of Ukraine, and let me go get a picture of it, these are fairly advanced tanks, about as advanced as the Challenger 2s, and sometimes maybe even a little bit more. This is a picture of an M1A2 actually, but it'll stand in for our M1A1, but regardless, I think if the Ukrainians are requesting it, I think it's a fairly decent request. The Ukrainians are the ones who are watching these main battle tanks perform in the field, and they've watched the Leopard 2's interaction, they've watched the Challenger 2's interaction as well, and you know they're getting a lot of data and feedback from the crews and also from commanders of these units on how these tanks are actually performing in the field, whether it be effective, efficient, or somewhat inefficient, or if there are some small hiccups and problems that have come up along the way. If the Ukrainians have seen that, I can't deride them for wanting their crews to be trained further before they're introduced into service. The M1 Abrams is a very advanced tank, and there's a lot involved in the operations of it, and it's also very different on the logistical side of things than all the other tanks that have been introduced into Ukrainian service so far, like the Leopard 2 and the Challenger. The Abrams operates off of a jet turbine engine. It is not a diesel engine like the other tanks have. That may require a much longer amount of time for the logisticians and the repairmen to wrap their heads around how that works and what kind of challenges that's going to create, and so that may be why the training program is extended. Of course, we're trying to come up with multiple assumptions. Really, all of them could be the reason why, or none of them could be the reason why this training program is being delayed again. But nevertheless, it does appear that the Ukrainians want to take extra steps to ensure that when the Abrams are introduced into the field, they will be more effective crew training side of things than all of the other tanks that have been introduced so far. Of course, I mean,
well, here's my question. I know you're taking it at face value what they're saying, but just from a neutral perspective, if they felt that way, that they need the best training possible before they get their equipment from the U.S., then how come with the F-16s they were willing to forego, having the best training to go ahead and get the jets now versus wait until later until they get better training? Because it's not lining up.
Well, because with the Abrams is coming in after something around 30 to 50 Leopard 2s have been introduced in the service and 14 Challenger 2s. So they've gotten an increase of an approximate 70 main battle tanks in the field, all of them up to a modern Western grade. And so at this point, there isn't a necessary demand for immediate new tanks. They've got 70 of them, and those 70 tanks we've hardly seen attrited. I think we've seen maybe 1 or 2 Leopards confirmed completely destroyed, complete write-offs, and 1 Challenger 2 that's also been a complete write-off. But that isn't really a massive loss where they have to go, damn the training, just get the tanks here like they did with the Leopard 2s and the Challengers. Because they were wanting some Western main battle tanks to be there for the counteroffensive. But now that they have them, they don't really have to be as in much of a rush, probably, to get the Abrams in service because they already have met the demands for Western tanks. On the other hand, they don't have any Western aircraft at all. They are only operating with Soviet-era MiG-29s and Su-27s, and so getting F-16s in service as soon as possible to just get that ability there, even if the training is somewhat shortened and not as comprehensive as it could be, it is more important to do that than it would be with the Abrams at this point, because of those reasons. Hopefully that kind of makes sense and is a good explanation why, because I wouldn't really know why. That feels like the most logical answer to me, but maybe there's another answer as to why they're wanting to accelerate F-16 training, but then delay and prolong Abrams training instead.
I think we'll find out sooner or later. There's something going on in the background that we don't know about very clearly. And maybe we'll learn that they're getting something better, maybe, or perhaps something like that. Maybe it's a good thing and not a bad thing.
Do they get like the M10 Booker or something like that? But anyways, you know what? Let me go pull up the M10 Booker. I think that's what it is, the M10 Booker combat vehicle light tank. Here we go. This is actually a little bit of a new creation from the U.S. Army Field Kitchens. I'm just kidding. This is a tank that is currently in development, and they're trying to iron out the kinks of this thing and figure out how it works and if it works well. But this is supposed to be a new light tank for the large part for the U.S. Army and also possibly the Marine Corps as well.
I'm glad they got that toxic fume issue fixed. That little minor tweak to the design of the thing. Just a small little issue.
Dude, some soldier went up to it and said, "Hey, I smell pineapple." Everyone, oh! They're like, "Oh God, get away!" But anyways,
They said, take it easy, Private. We're still ironing out the kinks with this thing. Don't get so crazy.
They said, calm down, son. The MREs will be coming around in a little bit. You'll be constipated for days. Just calm down. And they said, no, I'm seriously smelling like pineapple, man. And then they're like, oh, God, the engine exhaust. But anyways, this little thing here is a very interesting light tank. Of course, it hasn't even entered Army service at this moment. And we don't really know what kind of new technologies this thing may be trying to push into service. But honestly, if I had to put it technologically up against something else, I would say it's pretty similar to an AMX-10. So maybe we could see these things in the battlefields of Ukraine, but considering that it's brand new, it most likely will be deemed a national security risk, and we'll end up not sending it there for that reason. Because usually we like to send older, more outdated stuff, because there isn't as much technologically that could be compromised on older systems, because we've already surpassed them technologically. So if they get captured by the Russians, and they try and pick it apart and then send the info to the Chinese, there isn't really a lot anyone can do with it, and they're not really learning about America's most modern and advanced abilities that we may have. But moving on from that, unfortunate to hear that the Abrams training program was delayed, but hey, if Ukraine is requesting it, then there has to be a pretty decent reason for them to do that. Moving on from that and into the next one, we also got to see that 9 more Ukrainian children have been brought home to Ukraine after the Ukrainians have made another arrangement to release some of the children that are being held captive inside of Russia. Their faces were blurred out, but of course you can see that the families are pretty happy to have them back, and it's good to know that the Ukrainian government is trying everything they can to get children to return from Russia and arrange their release. Moving on from that and into our last bit of location unknown news, and I have to apologize to everyone so much tonight because I understand that I'm stuttering a good deal. Sadly, I have been exhausted today. Only got 4 hours of sleep, and I also fell asleep for about a whole hour before the stream even went live. So it has been a tiresome day for me. So I would like to apologize for the constant stuttering, because I bet that's getting annoying to some people, because it's annoying to me. But moving on to the Russian casualty.
What happened to that busy, though? Where's that cold brew at?
Man, the busy, I don't even think the busy is able to power through this one. I'm just powering through in sheer willpower alone, because that's what we do. The Lee Spring Army, as we all know, giving the grand old speech that we always give, never backs down, never stops. I promised y'all that this stream would run 6 days a week at the beginning of this war, and, well, actually, it's going to run every single day until the war ends, and we've been able to largely keep that up except for Monday, and I'm not going to give up another day unless if we have to. And so, moving on into the casualty report, we got to see that one Bobcat skid steer was destroyed. And also, your mic went out, and all I heard was, I was like, oh, he's making a rap song over there. But one Bobcat skid steer destroyed, and the losses in every other category were absolutely incredible today. 640 Russian soldiers destroyed in 24 hours. That's one of the higher numbers that we've seen over the past few weeks. 23 armored personnel carriers destroyed over 24 hours. One of the higher numbers that we've seen over the past several weeks. The Ukrainians are once again trying to shoot for a record. They fell a little short today, but 47 supply trucks destroyed in 24 hours. 47 of them. Do y'all know how many tons?
Where'd they find those?
Damn, son, where'd you find this? Do y'all know how many tons of equipment that possibly were destroyed on the backs of these supply trucks? If every single one of these supply trucks can carry 10 tons of supplies, which is about standard for a normal Euro 4320, that means that I have to whip out my calculator first, because I'm not going to be able to add this stuff together in my head, because I'm already tired, and y'all know I'm bad at math, so it doesn't work. That means that 470 unrealized tons of equipment may have been destroyed today just on these supply trucks alone. 470 tons. That is about the weight of around 12 Russian main battle tanks of equipment, just raw equipment that may have been destroyed, and also 47 trucks that would have been able to carry those supplies to the front lines. Logistics are the most important thing that an army runs off of. I cannot state that enough, because we hardly get to talk about it anymore, because the front lines are so, I guess you could say, stagnant compared to what they were at the beginning of the war, that you can't really talk about supply lines much and how they're developing and what kind of strains it's putting on the militaries, because they are largely the same as they were around 8 months ago, with very small changes in between. But logistics are what armies run off of. Nations lose wars because of how poorly logistics are run. Hell, in the Spanish-American War, there was a lot of talk in the U.S. military, and specifically the U.S. Army, that the logistics were just god-awful. And the lessons learned in the Spanish-American War helped out in some small ways once we started to get around to World War I. And, of course, World War I wasn't a cakewalk either. There was a lot of logistical problems that the U.S. also ran into there. And by the time World War II came around, the United States had the logistics figured out so well that we could actually provide luxury goods. And when I say luxury goods, I'm not meaning like a mink coat or anything. I'm talking about like ice cream, which is considered a luxury, to U.S. Marines in the Pacific, and had special built ships for that kind of stuff. And that really tells you how important logistics can be. And also, it's a great thing for morale. And of course, Russian morale is incredibly low because of the lack of logistics and supplies. And we can safely assume it will be greatly lowered because of this massive loss of supply trucks today. But I'm giving a lot of weight to the loss of supply trucks, and not really a lot of weight that is also equally deserved in the main battle tanks losses today. 23 tanks were lost in 24 hours. That is two entire battalion tactical groups worth of tanks destroyed. I'm going to get y'all a little graph here real quick.
The museum just died.
Yeah, dude. The Bovington Tank Museum literally just got wiped out. But let me go and get y'all a battalion tactical group structure graph, because I feel like, and let me see here. Let's see, that is the Austrian army. We do not want the Austrian armies. Russian BTG structure. Let me go put that in. Russian BTG structure. Here we go. So let's see if this is an updated one. Yes, this is. So this is from a website called Five Coat Consulting Group, which sounds like a mercenary group. I don't know. But what we can see here is the normal composition vehicularly, if that's even a word, of a Russian battalion tactical group. Just to give y'all a little bit of an idea of what I'm always referencing when we're talking about the casualty reports, every single battalion tactical group will have 30 armored personnel carriers specifically for the transport of the infantry in that unit. Every battalion tactical group also has about 800 Russian soldiers inside of it. Every battalion tactical group also should, in theory, have around 10 main battle tanks inside of it. And we can see that illustrated down here with T-90Ms or T-14s from what it appears, which we know almost no Russian BTG has. But based off of the losses that we've seen in 24 hours, we saw 23 of these APCs destroyed. If we're just talking about a single battalion tactical group taking all of these losses, meaning that there's only 7 armored personnel carriers left in this battalion tactical group, and we saw the tank forces destroyed twice over, and then an additional 3 main battle tanks destroyed on top of that. Just to kind of give y'all a scale of how big these losses are. Of course, these battalion tactical groups that we're talking about only exist in theory. All of these tanks, the 23 of them, were wiped out along the entirety of the front line, which is hundreds of miles long. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of Russian battalion tactical groups along that line. But if you were to actually condense them into a battalion tactical group taking on all of these losses, it is unbelievably large just in the number of losses that they are taking. And moving on from that, we can see the losses in the artillery are also monumentous today as well. 31 artillery pieces lost in 24 hours. And if we go back to that BTG, you can see their MLRS battery right here, because the Russians, in theory, should largely have MLRSs and more advanced equipment to work with, but they really don't end up having that. So we can't even really show what the total artillery losses would look like, because that's not really represented on most BTG graphs. Also, here's another graph that's probably a little bit better because it doesn't have that giant orange thing on top of it if the graphics load. But we can't even show y'all what those losses really would look like. We can also see that 29 drones were destroyed, an impressively high number. 1 MLRS was also knocked out, which means that if we were to take that to a battalion tactical group, one of these little grads right here in this category would have been lost. And we can also see that another anti-aircraft warfare system was destroyed as well. Y'all can get the picture incredibly well today that the Ukrainians have been on their A game in terms of destroying Russian forces. While they're not moving forward in massive amounts right now, and it does appear that most Ukrainian groups are taking a moment to reconsolidate and then prepare for the next push, that has not stopped them from being a war machine on the front line and being able to destroy massive amounts of Russian equipment. It actually appears that their slowing of their offensive has allowed for them to destroy an even greater number of Russian vehicles than was the case when they were actually advancing. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that casualty report, and now we're going to be moving on into some more news inside of Russia. There's a lot that happened there today. Also, a very interesting statement from Putin as well that's admitting some things that the Russian government officially denies. But before we get into all of that, we have to address what all of y'all have been talking about in the live chat. And so take it away, Matthew.
All right, so moving on to our first poll segment, and also I see many of you have noticed that I am feeling
Oh, you're breaking up. Say again.
and sounding much better today, and I have to say that I am, and thank goodness for that. Oh no!
Oh God!
Well, I was saying I was feeling better, but obviously the mic isn't liking that very much. So hopefully I'm coming through clear now. But I am feeling better today, and thank goodness for that because I really hate feeling sick. So moving on to our first poll question, it says, do you think Russia will respond terribly to Romania/US NATO exercise next week in the Black Sea? It looks like 47% said no, Russia can't do anything really. 25% said yes, Russia will react extreme to it. 22% said, they might, but unlikely. And 6% said unsure. And on this one, I gotta say that it is definitely very provocative to go over there and basically perform naval exercises right off the left side of Crimea. That is a pretty bold move. I think it's good. I think the U.S. should be showing strength toward Russia. The key here is not to bow down to the bully or back down to the bully. It's to show them that we are in charge and we aren't scared of them and there's nothing they can do to intimidate us. Because in reality, unless Russia is ready to start a nuclear war, they really can't do anything unless they want to start a conventional war, which would absolutely destroy Putin and his regime. So I think it's good and it's about time. So Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I think this is a great move by the United States, and I don't think that the Russians are going to respond beyond protest. The Russians will, of course, run their mouths about it, but that's all they can do. You know, Russia, in the modern sense, the best way to put them is a nuclear gas station. That's all they are. They only produce oils and gases, and then they have nuclear weapons, and that's about it. They don't really have much more beyond that. They don't have a good economy. They don't have a good standard of living. They don't have a high median income. Everything in Russia is pretty subpar, or as the folks in the street would call it, pretty raggedy ass. And it's pretty crazy to think that they would actually respond in any real way to what the U.S. is doing in the Black Sea. Hell, we could probably sail a Arleigh Burke-class destroyer into reclaimed Russian territorial waters around Crimea, and they probably wouldn't do much to it rather than get near it and maybe run their mouths, and that would be about it. So in my opinion, I think it's a great move. I think it's certainly one that we've been asking NATO to do and the Western world to do, which is to show strength against the Russians and not try and always skirt around the situation and avoid further escalation. I believe that every once in a while, their escalation should also be met with our escalation, not to the point of trying to create a conventional war, but once again trying to put them into their place and remind them of what they are, which is garbage, like their trench fortifications on the front lines. And so I think this is a great move, and I don't think the Russians will respond in any way rather than a diplomatic protest. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And the next poll says, should NATO provide Romania with air defense for their border with Ukraine? 84% said yes and shoot down incoming threats from Russia. 9% said, let's not get too extreme. 6% said unsure, and 2% said no, build bomb shelters instead. And I think the better move, for example, if we're going to start holding naval exercises in the Black Sea and go bold that way, then why not be bold by putting air defense right on the border of Romania and Ukraine? So the next time Russia has an accident, quote unquote, we can neutralize that accident without it actually hurting or killing anyone inside of Romania. If it's truly unintentional, then Russia shouldn't have a problem with that. And in fact, Russia should encourage that because they didn't intend to shoot the drone over into Romania. So to me, it seems like a perfectly reasonable and a necessary thing to do to put air defense on the border. And I don't know why they don't already have it, considering the attacks happen routinely right there, right next to their border. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, could you reread that poll prompt? What happened? Reread the line.
It says, should NATO provide Romania with air defense for their border with Ukraine?
Yes, 100% I think they should. That would be a smart idea. Great to see that the Romanians are reactively responding to the situation, but I believe we should also have a proactive response to the situation and shoot down the drones where people aren't even having to go into bomb shelters in the first place. It would still be good to have them, though, don't get me wrong, but I don't think that we need to rely on those as the first line of defense for Romanian citizens who have the protections of a NATO country. Also, another thing that I've seen some people in the live chat saying, and really quickly to talk about the U.S. Navy being in the Black Sea, is that someone said, how are you going to get an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer into the Black Sea. Well, the same way the Russians got all their ships in the Black Sea, you sail it in. There's a thing called the sea, and ships can travel through it fairly easily, actually, interestingly enough. They're kind of built for that thing. And also, what's interesting, Matty, and kind of something that we all just glossed over, including myself, is how in the world is the U.S. Navy getting into the Black Sea when, from the last information we got, the Turks had closed off the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles to everybody, including Western countries. Apparently, there's been a change in that status, or that policy, in the past few days to allow for the U.S. Navy to enter the Black Sea at all.
I have a feeling that if the U.S. asked Turkey to let us through, I doubt Turkey's going to say no, because Turkey may say no to everyone else, but they're not going to say no to us, because that wouldn't be smart.
Man,
we control NATO.
The Turks sit there with that little leather thing that they have at the bank, like the little things you clip together that create the queues. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're sitting there with it, and they're going, no, you can't enter. Like the Greeks, can we please enter? No, can't enter. Russians, can we leave? No, can't leave. And then America, open it up. Okay, yes, sir. Have a great day. And they're like, okay, have fun. That's probably what they're like. But I got to say, that's good to know that they are going to allow the United States in. And also, some people are saying that the ships will probably be smaller in size. They probably will be. They'll probably be minesweepers, maybe some smaller frigates. But one thing's for certain is that they are U.S. naval ships. So regardless whether they're minesweepers, hell, it could be a coastal patrol boat. That is the first time we've ever seen this happen in the war. And not only that, that is a U.S. Navy ship. That isn't just a minesweeper. That is a small part of the largest navy in the world. Well, the largest navy, well, actually, it is the largest navy in the world. I was about to say, the Chinese might. Nope, the Chinese don't have a larger navy. They actually still have, I believe, a smaller one at the moment. And of course, like 179 of their boats out of about the 480 I think they have, because they're almost like neck and neck with the United States, are motor torpedo boats. And I don't really count motor torpedo boats as an actual part of the Navy. I mean, get a frigate or something, and then we'll be talking. But a motor torpedo boat that carries like 2 surface-to-air missiles and 2 torpedoes, or 2 ground-to-ground missiles, or surface-to-surface missiles, that's not really even worth talking about. But anyways, beyond that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, and also a couple of things that we've been seeing in the live chat, which have been interesting comments. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so that was our last poll for now, so we are moving on to our super chat questions. And up first, we have a very generous $100 donation, bigly, from
moly.
Andre Mogasan. And thank you very much, Andre, for that very generous support. He says, as a Romanian, and I think he has told us before that he is a Romanian, he says, don't put too much hope in my country's army and or government. And the army has just a few units that are per NATO standards, and the rest are in extremely bad shape. And the army still has a lot of Soviet practices, and the government and army are both filled with corruption. And Andre, I would have to say that kudos to you for saying that, because there's a lot of countries in Europe that are really not fully prepared to fight off Russia on their own, or anyone for that matter that's a real powerhouse, and they won't ever admit that. So kudos for admitting that. And of course, being in NATO, Romania would be protected, but on its own, kind of iffy. But Enforcer, what say you?
Well, first off, I got to thank you for the massive amount of support, Andre Mogasan. And I love that freaking, jacked up squirrel you got in the profile picture. That thing looks like it's, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, and it just got done getting its roids. That is a jacked up squirrel, and I gotta respect the profile picture. It's a good one. Moving on from that and talking about Romania, being completely honest, and your super chat allows me to be pretty honest here. Romania is a little bit down there on the scale, in most regards, as far as corruption and their military goes. They are a decent country, and I don't deride the Romanians at all, because the Romanians are some really cool people with a great culture. But a lot of what Ceausescu laid out back in the Soviet era kind of still exists today in some form. The Romanians have tried combating that the best they can and trying to create a government that will be less corrupt over time, but it is still a pretty tough situation in Romania, and it takes a lot of time to reverse things like what Ceausescu did to the country from about the 1950s all the way up until the very end of his life in the very late 80s. So gotta be honest with you, it is a little bit of a rougher situation in Romania, and even militarily as well. That's why Romania had MiG-21s to give to Ukraine, and a lot of people went, oh, that's great. And then, a lot of people were also going, wait a minute, why does Romania have MiG-21s? And then everyone went, well, it's still great to have them for Ukraine. But hopefully Romania will be able to continue to improve. But one thing I do have to say, is that while European countries, I feel like every single country in Europe should always be continuing to strive to improve training, to root out corruption, especially in Eastern European countries where they're still trying to get over the heavy damage that was caused to their governmental and bureaucratic systems from Soviet rule. I still feel like it's very important for them to constantly improve, but at the same time, it is not that much of a concern because, as the saying goes, have no fear, America is here. And while everyone always goes, oh, it's the Americans with their overconfidence in their armed forces, it is the largest and most powerful army on Earth, and really every other branch as well, the Air Force, the Navy, and so on. And so while Romania isn't in a great shape, Romania does have the massive protection of the United States, and also Poland is becoming a phoenix rising out of the ashes of the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact of the 90s, and is going to be it is going to be the largest military in Europe by far. So I wouldn't fear that much, but hopefully Romania and some other countries in that area, Bulgaria, can improve their militaries and constantly try and root out corruption like the Ukrainians are attempting to do, so that way every member of the alliance is stronger at the end of the day than they were at the start. And also, a lot of people take comments that we make, considering that we are Americans, whenever we say some countries are a little bit below the mark, to be disparaging to those countries and acting like America's on a higher footing. And I do not mean it that way at all. I would like to actually take a little bit of a minute to clarify that, because some people just completely misunderstand that from our end. When I say that a country is weak, it's not meant to make people or other nations sound like they are handicapped and they are relying entirely on the United States for protection or even to survive. What I'm saying that is as an ally and as a friend of that nation, there is some constructive criticism to be had to help them improve. There are some countries that just do so well you can't really even say anything to them, like the Polish. The Polish, honestly, are such a well-rounded country militarily, you can't really even say anything much about them. And especially with their further expansions going on in the next few years and how much of their GDP percentage that they're spending on defense, you can't even really make a comment rather than they're doing amazing. There are other countries, though, that I think should certainly step up to the plate, like the British, the Germans, and the French being some of the major power players in Europe. But what were you about to say, Matthew?
I was about to say that in reality, I don't think many countries in Europe on their own are ready to take on, for example, Russia, because even though Russia is a subpar fighting force, they do have power behind them to a certain extent. For example, Ukraine would not have lasted as long as they have until now without the full support of NATO and the international community, because on their own, they might have been in some trouble. But since we're backing them up, Ukraine has a ton of grit and determination. So they had that already, but they didn't have the equipment nor the training to get it done. So I think even Poland on its own would be in a foul shape because, of course, Russia's getting help from China in the backdoor means. So, I like it when people like Andre recognize that some countries aren't really ready for situations like that, because it's operating in reality and not the fake world. We had a guest on at one point, we won't say who it was. He got very upset that we insinuated that one of the European countries wasn't really ready and also wasn't doing their part to basically help out with the defense alliance, and got very upset about it. But like Andre said, some countries aren't ready for it, and they need the help of the alliance to be able to hang on. So, that's my opinion on it.
Well, I don't think we should be viewing it that way, though. I don't think we should be saying, oh, look, that country is weak, good thing they're here. I mean, I honestly think we should be looking at it as they're weak. We should be finding ways to work with them to improve their situation, rather than just go, oh, look, it's a crappy member with a crappy military. Let's just, laugh at them and just leave it like that. We should be finding ways to try and improve that if there is a way. Because that's.
But in reality though, you really can't do much to help, because they have to spend on their own, and the U.S. outspends everyone worldwide on defense. So nobody's going to match the U.S. when it comes to that. So without the alliance, I don't think there's any way you could let Poland or Ukraine stand on their own. It's just not really going to be effective.
Well, I mean, like Ukraine lasted for about 3 to 4 months at the beginning of the war pretty well without much Western support at all. Like most Western support came in about by the third or fourth month, and they had already at that point taken. Well, the Russians had retreated out of half of the occupied territory they had at that point, and the Ukrainians weren't getting any support from the outside. So I would have to disagree with you on that one. But I think that we should constantly be working with every country that is in NATO to try and improve their situation at the end of the day, because I don't think we should take a statement, like Andre said, of his own country, that the Romanian army and navy isn't anything to count on, and just take that for what it is and move on. There should be some kind of an effort made to improve the Romanians' military situation and hopefully their governmental situation. That's more of an EU affair, however. That's not a NATO affair. But as a NATO affair, we should be constantly trying to badger countries, in a friendly way, but still making sure that it's clear it needs to be done, that more defense spending needs to be made, and also more reforms need to be made in former Warsaw Pact nations like Romania, so that way those militaries aren't a dead weight on NATO. They are, in fact, a positive plus. Because it's not good it would be like running a company and saying, oh, look, the marketing division is running poorly. They suck. And then just letting the marketing division continue to do poorly. It should be something that's
but also another point is, even though it sounds good to tell these countries to spend, the 2% of GDP, they've never really done that. There's only a handful of them, like Poland, that actually does that over a certain amount. And, unless we're going to go strong arm them or something, we can't force them to do it. So we have to guarantee European security. So the only way to do that is to put trust in the power players of NATO that we're going to come to the rescue whenever there's a problem. Because how do you suggest to force the countries to pay the 2% at least?
Well, I mean, you could start to tell them if you do not pay your 2%, and considering that the United States largely is the one who runs it, we're not going to take any considerations or statements made in the NATO forum as seriously as they would have been in the past. There are ways to make them do that. You could also start to try and leverage trade agreements and say, if you do not start to pay your proper quota, then we will start to mess around with trade agreements. They will start to pay their percentage.
I think we tried that.
Well, not really in the proper approach. The approach we took, and not really getting into it all too much, the approach we took wasn't really a friendly one. It was more so of a hostile one, which everyone immediately responds to by saying, screw you, I'm fine how I am, and then the problem continues to exist. We need to be able to tell countries there is a existential threat, the Russians, right here inside of Europe, and while Ukraine may be able to do well against them, we have to make sure that a single nation in NATO could do perfectly fine against them on their own, because there is strength through numbers, but not just that, there's also strength through quality as well. So I think that we should have some kind of a marked effort in NATO to constantly have countries exceeding the 2% goal, and not only that, in reforming their military so that way they are effective fighting forces, instead of just looking at each country and then just going, oh, well, that one's not that great, that one's not that good. Because what does that mean if we actually go to war? That means that we have multiple allies that are not going to be doing that great or that well, and resources are going to start becoming spread thin. And that's not anything that is a positive thing, and I don't think we should just take that at face value. But with that, I'm sadly...
I agree with you on that front. I do agree with you, though. They should pay their 2%. I just don't think there's any way to actually realistically force them to pay it. And we have to guarantee Europe's security, so we can't just kick them out, because that would be bad for us. So, unfortunately, we're caught in the catch-22. So, I do agree with you on the principle, though.
But, well, here's what I'm saying. America should not be viewed in this alliance as the umbrella that everyone gets the shade of, that is the protectorate of the entire European world. It shouldn't be viewed like that. America should be viewed as the strongman friend across the seas. And the nations that we are friends with in NATO, like Romania, should also be strongmen of their own as well. Obviously, they're not going to be able to spend $800 billion a year on their military. No one's suggesting that. I don't think that would be a fair statement to say at all, because their GDP isn't even that large. But they can still meet their 2% quota and above that, so that way every single friend in NATO is a strong one. You don't want your friends going to the bar with you for a brawl to be weaklings. You want everyone to be able to have a little bit of muscle on them, and that's what I'm talking about. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again for the massive amount of support, Andre Mogeson, in helping this channel to keep on running. And also, I hope that we were able to address that fairly well. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to BC Skyman, who puts in a very generous $100 donation himself as well.
Hey!
And thank you very much, BC, for the very generous support. He says, coffee and pizza money, and live chat question, please, and Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the massive amount of support, BC Skyman. And thank you for the coffee and the pizza fund. We love coffee and pizza. We had coffee tonight. I have coffee every single night. And it's that same putrid nitro culprit. Now, nitro culprit will keep you awake, and I've got to be honest, I'm exhausted beyond belief at this point. It's allowing me to stay alive for the stream, so it's decent stuff in that regard, but the flavor is just so tough. I mean, it's a tough coffee. But still, thank you so much for helping me to be able to drink it at all, to even be here for this channel. And thank you so much once again for the massive amount of support. And now, let's get on into that live chat in Slava Ukraini.
All right, and the live chat question goes to Julian Britt, who says, do y'all know which ships the U.S. will be sending to train with Ukraine?
At this moment, we don't, but we are assuming that they're not going to be the Nimitz-class supercarrier that I had in the thumbnail. They're most likely going to be smaller minesweepers and frigates, most likely. So at the moment, that's what we're getting from it, but we actually haven't gotten an official roster of the ships that will be involved in that exercise right now, so we're kind of taking a guess at it. And so with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well. And we are on to the last question of this question segment, and then we're going to be moving back into the news.
And this one goes to Hal Rose, who puts in a very generous $50 donation. And thank you very much, Hal, for that support also. And also, Hal and BC are channel legends. I forgot to say that earlier, by the way. And Hal says, Enforcer Matt, NATO is an organization that has no hardware, and individually, the members are all sovereign nations, and that NATO organizes schedules and logistics, and compare NATO's logistical efforts with those of Russia, and pick a question from the chat. And they don't have, Russia doesn't have anything like NATO, like whatever they're like bricks and junk like that. It's just, hot air.
And also, sorry for interrupting you, Matthew. You broke up there, and I thought you had ended talking, and then you kept on.
There's a huge delay.
Yeah, there's a massive delay right now, and I'm so sorry about that, everyone. It's not a DDoS attack. That's something on Discord's end tonight, so very sorry about that. But NATO is an organization that really doesn't have hardware, and that's something that a lot of people misunderstand about NATO, because a lot of people have an idea of viewing things two-dimensionally. And that's one of them, is that people think that NATO actually has like an army that's under NATO's control, and that's not the case. NATO is an alliance much like the Allies were in World War II. They're a group of countries that all share a common alliance, but they don't share a common army. So, that's something that people don't really understand much. When we talk about people paying their percentage or their quota in NATO, we're not talking about them paying into some kind of a pot. And that's something that was kind of misunderstood when someone, and I'm not going to say who they were back in the day, said that everyone's got to pay their fair share into NATO. There isn't really like a community pot where everyone just pays into NATO and NATO has some kind of like a standing army. Every single nation has their own military, and what we're talking about when we talk about spending quotas and spending percentages is how much each country is spending into their own militaries, and if that is meeting the 2% GDP quota that is laid out by NATO as a standard. And a lot of countries fall under the mark, and a lot of countries also know that as well. The British are especially one that has started to really get a firm grasp on that in about the past few years. But at the same time, they're also not upping their military spending. In fact, they produced 2 aircraft carriers, the HMS Queen Elizabeth and the HMS Prince of Wales, and they ended up largely kind of mothballing, like the HMS Prince of Wales is like a phantom carrier because they're kind of mothballing it, but not mothballing it at the same time because they don't really want to spend the operating costs to run that aircraft carrier. But I think that this is something that needs to change in the modern world, because while a lot of European countries have got complacent in the mindset of there isn't really an existential threat requiring them to meet that 2% quota, the world is changing rapidly. It's not like the world that we saw through the 90s and up until the 2010s and the mid-2010s, where there really wasn't anything to rise up to meet the Western world. We're seeing that while the Russians may not have an amazing economy, and they also have a pretty shoddy military, that hasn't stopped them from lashing out, and that's showing that there is still an existential threat that needs to drive NATO countries to meet those 2% spending requirements. And that's something that I think every NATO country should, and we should see stronger militaries in each NATO country, so that way each one can actually count on each other for defense, instead of when crap hits the fan, now we're having to react as a reactive alliance instead of a proactive alliance that is already able to meet the challenge at hand. Moving on into the next part, let's see, NATO organizes schedules and logistics, and that is correct, they do. NATO, and this is why a lot of people think that there's like some kind of a magical NATO thing in the background, is that people hear things like 5.56 NATO round, or a 7.62 by 51 NATO round, and then people think, oh, there's a NATO force out there, some magical thing out there, and no, there's not. It's just that NATO has agreed that there is going to be standardized equipment across the entire alliance. That's why every single Western tank has a 120mm main gun. The British have one. Theirs is rifled, but they're kind of an exception. Every single country now also has a 5.56 standard issue rifle. The Germans have the G36, the French have the FAMAS, the British have the L85, the United States has the M4. All of them shoot the same cartridge. And that means that if Germany was, for some reason, running out of ammunition could be shipped over from the United States that is also used for US service weapons, and they could easily be used in German service weapons as well. And that's kind of what NATO really only does. It's more of a standardization alliance as far as anything being unified amongst everyone, but beyond that, everyone's still kind of on their own, building up their own militaries and keeping them up to spec. But NATO's logistical efforts are far better than the Russians, because even the Russians have had problems with standardization. Every Western main battle tank will shoot a 120mm round. That is something that is guaranteed. Every Russian tank also fires a 125mm main round. That is also something that's guaranteed, and logistically is the same across the board. But the problem is that while a lot of Western main battle tanks have a pretty decent amount of parts that they share in some regards, and some of them are completely different in other regards and cannot share parts at all, a lot of Russian main battle tanks, there's just so much variety amongst them, there is no way for them to actually share parts. All of them have completely different parts requirements and supply needs, which will end up hampering any Russian effort in standardization. You have T-72s, T-80s, T-90s, which are a variation of the T-72, and then, if the Russians actually were able to field these, you have T-14 Armadas, and now you have T-62s and T-55s on the front line as well. You have about 6 different main battle tanks, and every single one of them requires completely different parts to be able to function, and some of them also require different ammunition. And that makes logistical nightmares. And NATO is always trying to find ways to get around that, and they've done that fairly well through the standardization procedures, like having everyone use a standardized ammunition for every single kind of weapon. And so with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, Hal Rose, in a somewhat more condensed way. This question segment has actually been monumentous in length. We started at like 9:50 and it's all the way to 10:20. This has been a 30-minute question segment, but I hope the answers have been pretty thorough tonight. And I also thank all of y'all, both Andre Mogeson, BC Skyman, and you, Hal Rose, for the support and helping the channel to keep on running, because you folks and y'all's massive support not only flatters us and blows us away that y'all appreciate this channel so much, but it also helps us to keep the thing going. And I thank y'all so much for that, because y'all are helping to make this possible for us to do every single day. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and it's now time for us to move on out of the question segment and on into Moscow, because Putin made a statement today that has gone against the Russian narrative. Or as they call it, the paradigm. But anyways, here it is. And it was a very short one, 30 seconds long, but I like to hear it. They also provoked this conflict in Ukraine and took advantage of it. I think there's no way at all everything was purposely done in order to create additional to limit our economic growth and holding back Russia's development. But then we were still starting on to think about what to do in order to ensure there. A lot has been done, of course, and there's still a lot to be done. Damn, well, the way he's talking right there, you would think he would have had a stroke. But one thing that's important to get out of this, and also the poor translation, is that he's admitted today that this war is seriously crippling the Russian economy. He said additional to limit our economic growth. That's a little bit of an important point right there, because up until this moment, the Russians have actually been stating that their economy is stronger than ever. In fact, they're growing while out of the Western world and out of Western trade. They're finding new friends. They're like an anime character. I don't even watch anime, but the power of friendship compels them to be stronger than they ever were before. And now today he's come out and completely thrown that all aside and said that they are limiting their economic growth during this war, and it's seriously hindering the Russian economy, which is really the most important thing to get out of this statement, and it is showing that there is serious economic strain for a statement like this to even be made at all. But moving on from that, and on into our next bit of news inside of Russia, we also got to see that an Su-34 is also getting the tire treatment at a Russian airbase in Tula. I gotta tell you, I don't even know what the hell is going on in their minds to do this kind of stuff. I mean, it looks like a junkyard now with all the tires on it, and also, if they want to use this Su-34 and scramble it, how long is it going to take them to get all the tires off the plane, or are they going to try and take off and let all the tires fall off as it taxis down the runway?
Take off and let them fall off.
They probably will.
Have you seen that meme where it's like, Goodyear tires or whatever, but it's like the off-brand, like, Bing Shilling Chinese version. It says Good Trip and it has like a polar bear on it.
No, I haven't seen that.
That's probably like the tires they're putting on this jet right here.
Man, you know, I'm thinking of a song, Matthew. I think you know the one I'm talking about. It's a Chinese song that I played a little bit around the house as a joke. You know, that's what I'm thinking of, seeing this this stuff on top of the plane right now, the Bing Shilling tires and everything, you know. Yeah, we'll leave it at that, though. But anyways, we're going to be moving on from that picture and on into our last bit of news inside of Russia before we get to Sumi, where we saw in Bryansk today more video of the damage that was caused to the electronics factory inside of the city. I love the little $5 Bing Shilling alarm going off on the ground, and we can also see another fire coming from the electronics plant. Apparently, it was hit twice. Lightning does strike in the same place twice, I'll have y'all know. But moving on from that, and out of the news in Russia, it's now time for us to move on into Sumi, where we saw today that a Russian attack has actually devastated the city of Sumi and a part of it, and Ukrainian first responders were in the area and trying to evacuate and save as many people from the rubble as possible. Here's the clip. They're now trying to shift the rubble around to try and find people inside of it.
Тільки треба цю держати, тепер, щоб вона зараз не пішла. Що ти донесеш?
And we can now see them saving a dog from the rubble. And we now see them showing the damage caused. We can see that the missile landed in a residential area, of course, not a military strategic target. We don't know a casualty report from this missile attack at the moment. Man, the police have got a damn hell of an intro and outro right there. I was like, damn, dude, that's pretty hardcore. But moving on from that, the next clip also shows the dog again. It's just a secondary clip. But moving on from that, we're now going to be moving on into the frontline situation in Ukraine. And starting off in the northeast, we got to see today that some Russian soldiers were calling for a little bit of an interesting thing, a genocide, which is kind of funny because a lot of people say the Russians aren't perpetrating a genocide in Ukraine, and yet the soldier has a pretty strong opinion that everyone in Ukraine, including the women and children, should be killed by the end of the war. I'll be letting y'all hear this guy raw and uncut, so here it is. I'll just be reading the translation. I won't be stepping in and trying to add any insight into this. And how do you feel about Ukrainians, our enemies? To begin with, I believe that Ukrainians as a nation don't exist. They are brainwashed Russians who see themselves differently. I think that the enemy must be destroyed. Because only dead do not shoot you in the back, and won't raise children that will take up arms and avenge their parents. Are you talking about the enemy or the entire Ukrainian nation? Ukrainian people, like I said, they're brainwashed people that have been told for many years that they are a separate nation. There should be full de-Ukrainization, because from their ethnical side, let me go back and get that. From their ethnical side, we do not differ from each other. The differences were imposed over the last 100 years. And also, this is another Russian. I'm not even going to read off what he said. That's the end of those clips.
Under that goofy logic that the Russians have, they should just take everybody over.
Yeah, they should just take everybody over and end up killing them too, every single one of them, including the kids, so that way they can't raise up in the future and shoot them in the back. And those are the kind of people that some folks in the world think are on the right side of history, which is pretty bizarre. I guess if you think that, you must think that Hitler was also on the right side of history as well, which the Russians also think, because they are Nazis through and through for the most part with how they act, behave, and even what they say. A lot of them just say they are Nazis. But moving on from the northeastern news and on into Bakhmut, we got to say that the Ukrainians have been doing a little bit of denazification of their own after a Russian assault failed today in the northern flank. Here they all are. They're about to all go away. And there they go. I wonder, will they be...
And there they went.
And there they went. It's like the end of a vacation when the family gets to the airport. Oh my goodness. Well, would you look at that?
Oh my.
Oh my. Looks like a nursery filled with sleeping kids. And I gotta say, pretty interesting to see all of them taking a nap at the same time. I didn't know that adults took full-on napping sessions, but apparently they do. They kind of need to grow up a little bit. But moving on from that and behind Bakhmut, we also got to see 5 anti-aircraft systems being destroyed in a montage video around the area. When you see the first one here sitting in the field, we can see the second one there sitting in the field. We now see the first one getting hit and exploding. We see the missile still going haywire through the field. Dude, the Russian sat there and said, "Oh, look, it's a ninja star." And then it just goes spinning across the field. Oh, man. And here's the second one about to get knocked out as well. We see it's actually a couple of air defense systems in the same field. And there it goes. Artillery hits directly on top of the system, knocking it out.
What air defense doing, though?
Man, air defense ain't doing shit. Man, they ain't doing nothing.
No cap.
Man, no cap. Bussin' on God. And we can see the Buke continuing to burn. And just look at that.
Rebuke the Buke.
And there goes the next one.
Begone, Buke.
Man, they rebuked it.
That's what I just said.
Man, I'm telling you, man. I had to use it again because it's such a good joke. Call me Amy Schumer because we be stealing jokes up in here. But anyway, so you can see the artillery setting off a missile on top of that air defense system as well. And now we can see another air defense system burning in the trees. But with that, that's the end of that little clip right there. And wonderful to see that they were able to get 5 surface-to-air missile systems in the same area. Meanwhile, we also got a little bit of drone footage from Klishchiivka during the... I guess you could say the downtime in the fighting, and we got to see a little bit of what it's looking like down there. And so, the good question is, what the ground looking like, though? And did we get a good look? We see the drone slowly panning over the battlefield. Of course, this looks like early morning. The area is still covered in a heavy cloud of fog. The floor is made of floor. And we can see the drone continuing to fly over the largely destroyed tree lines. They've been stripped of all their leaves due to all of the heavy shelling. We see the railway line that passes by Klishchiivka and Andriivka down there to the bottom left side of the screen. We can also see what appears to be the plume of a surface-to-air missile that was fired a little bit earlier. And now we're kind of getting a little bit of a view of Klishchiivka right down there. Some people are saying that this looks like World War I, and it really does. We can also see some more hits or things that have been fired from Klishchiivka. It appears more so that something has been fired from Klishchiivka right there. We don't know what. But we see the drone continuing to show us more of the battlefield. And I gotta tell you, Matthew, when you put a grayscale on anything, it ends up looking like World War I. The war in Ukraine, it really does.
It really does. It changes like the whole look of the landscape and everything. Almost
Seems like David Attenborough is going to start narrating this whole thing. But with that, that's the end of that clip, and showing y'all a little bit of what the area of Klishkivka's looked like on drone footage today. And moving on from that clip and down into the area of Toretsk, we got to see what I call the Grand Battery of the Convention. Some of y'all might be thinking, what the hell are you talking about? Well, back in the day, back during the Napoleonic era, Napoleon created a massive artillery battery that was called the Grand Battery of the Convention. It was massive. It was incredibly powerful. Suffice it to say, he loved artillery. And a lot of people hated him for that, because artillery really was a winning maxim of the battlefield, and it still is to this day. And we can see that the Ukrainians are apparently getting that idea as well, as they're operating an entire battery of 3 M777s in the same spot, and apparently just bombarding a grid square with these things. So here's the clip. Also got to mute it. But we can see the M777s all firing, one after the other. Got to say, it's a beautiful sight. We're now going to be moving on from those clips and further down the line and into the area of the southern front. We didn't get any news from Donetsk today, and we also didn't see any frontline advances in Bakhmut, so not really a strategic overview for that area. But moving on down into the southern front, specifically around Staromayorsk, it appears that some activity has been seen around here today, and especially a large amount of it, because in the area of Yekhanivka, we got to see an entire battery of 4 Russian SPGs were wiped out by a HIMARS strike. 4 SPGs in a single strike. Here's the clip.
Давай, давай!
When you see the HIMARS rockets being fired right there, and in a second we're about to see what the battery doing though. We got to mute that, but we can now see the HIMARS rounds coming in. 1 SPG already going up. May even be 2 of them right there. We see it continuing to burn and explode. And that's just 1 of 4. The next ones are soon to follow. And we can now see multiple fires later on. 1 fire there, 1 there, and 1 further down the way. Right now we can confirm in this part of the clip that 3 SPGs have been destroyed now by a HIMARS strike. And we can now see the 4th one going up in flames. 4 entire SPGs of the Russian army destroyed in about 20 minutes. We see them continuing to burn, roast, and explode. I've got to say, this is a more violent explosion in this tree line than the one you see at family reunions when the 2 sides of the family come together that hate each other. And I got to say that this is just roasting. Very impressively. It looks like a smoke screen, but it's made instead of out of smoke grenades and white phosphorus, it's made entirely of Russian artillerists that are no longer going to be occupying Ukraine for the most part.
They learned what fire and fury was firsthand.
To bomb the shit out of them. But anyways, wonderful to see.
Oh dear, they're really getting tough, those jerks.
Man, be like Gordon Ramsay. What is he doing, that jerk? You know, when he was doing the Michelin star thing?
Yeah.
Oh, man. That guy's a character. He is a character, Kathleen. But anyways, with that, that's the end of the clip. But wonderful to see 4 entire SPGs destroyed. And moving on from that and into the area of Zaitopobezhanya, we also got to see the 36th Marine Brigade hunting some Russian vehicles with their drone forces during the downtime. We're going to be muting that. We can see the bomblet dropping and hitting a Russian supply truck right there. Ooh, look at it. Wait a minute. That's a Scooby-Doo van. Like, Soink Scoob, I think we're under fire. Ruh-roh, Raggy. Casualties. But anyways, you can see the next...
Man.
You see the next
This
bomb.
is a different episode of Scooby-Doo where the boogeyman has bombs.
Like, Zoink Scoob, I think this is more than property damage. Ruh-roh, Raggy, murder. But anyways,
Dang, the masked bandit this time, he came armed. He didn't just have a mask.
Man, he wasn't going kind. He was going Slava Ukraini. It's Slava Ukraini. And there goes the next one. Man, I'm loving it. Ba-da-da-da-da. Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry, I can't do that. That is copyright. Whoops. But anyways, great to see the 36th Marine Brigade knocking out some Russian equipment and vehicles with their drone bomblets. And moving on to the next clip, in Robotyne, we also got to see that some Ukrainian citizens that were still in the area somehow were waving Ukrainian flags as tanks drove by in the area. It appears that the Ukrainians may have not made it to this area before, perhaps. And we can see the Ukrainians over there waving the flags as they drive by. This may also be an old clip that we're finally seeing for the first time, but a very nice sight to see that folks are glad and proud to see the Ukrainian army once again marching back through. We're now going to be moving on from that clip and into the next one, where we also saw the 36th Marine Brigade again hard at work around the area of Zaporizhzhia. Oh, we're going to be muting that. But when you see their little intro here, wait a minute, that's a duplicate.
Hey, that's the same thing.
Like, Zoink Scoob, I think we showed a duplicate. Raggy. But anyways, moving on from that, we're now going to be deleting that one because that's a duplicate, and we're now going to be moving on into the area of Priutny, where we saw a 155mm Robotyne SPG firing. It was one hell of a sight. Okay, alright, we're going to be muting that, but when you see the Robotyne here, about to see it fire in the morning sun, and there it goes around. Beautiful stuff.
Nothing like shells in the morning with a side of cheese.
Man, I gotta tell you, man, I've been more so a fan of the actual stuff inside of the shells, the eggs, more so than the shells. Shells got a good amount of calcium in it, but they're a little too crunchy for me. But moving on from that little clip, which is wonderful to see, I'm now gonna be taking y'all down to see something that was a real spit in the face by the Chinese today, and that got me somewhat annoyed. And has also infuriated and angered a lot of Ukrainians as well, so I thought I'd show it to y'all, because why not? So let's go down to Mariupol, and hopefully the map will get some resolution. And let's go to the theater, the drama theater in Mariupol that was destroyed, with around 600 people dying inside of it during the attack. It was an absolute atrocity, and the theater largely still stands to this day. At some point, it appeared that the Russians were going to demolish the building, but then they left it standing for the most part. Most of it is still there. A Chinese opera singer that is fairly famous within the People's Republic of China, Communist China, otherwise known as mainland China, ended up traveling to Russia and then into the occupied area of Ukraine to Mariupol, climbing through the building, where we understand that there are still remains of dead Ukrainians inside of the building, and then went up to a balcony and then proceeded to sing the song Katyusha, which is a famous song from the Soviet Union during the Second World War. This is in violation of the Ukrainian law, and not only that, is a massive insult to around the 600 people that ended up dying inside of this building. To put the 600 people into scale, around 2,000 people died in 9/11, and that's considered an atrocity and a tragedy that is still talked about in the United States to this day. So this is largely, nearly the equivalent of standing on top of one of the destroyed World Trade Centers and singing something like the anthem of the People's Republic of China on top of it, while the rebel is still there. So here's the clip.
正当梨花开遍了天涯，河上飘着柔漫的轻纱，卡秋莎站在俊俏的岸上，歌声好像明媚的春光。卡秋莎站在俊俏的岸上，歌声好像明媚的春光。
And she really acted like she did
Well,
something
hopefully they can
there.
find her and lock her up for doing something like that, but surely she knew what that was about. You know, just walk into a bomb theater and start singing that.
Yeah, you just see the head of a kid still sticking out from the rubble and go, oh yeah, this is a great place to sing a little bravado here. Nah, I don't think so. And I think that she needs to be found and arrested, if it's possible.
Let her sing from the jail cell. That'll work.
Yeah, you know, oh no, there's a lot of jokes to be made there. But anyways, we're going to be moving on from that and from the city of Mariupol and that sickening sight. Great to know that the Chinese are always on the right side of history. You know, it's not like they're doing anything questionable either. I'm sure that all those people in Western China, I'm sure they're all having a fun time in the summer camps, as the Chinese call them, just learning about Chinese history. But moving on from Mariupol and the great upstanding people of the People's Republic of China, we're now going to be moving on into the Robotyne area, where we've seen a large amount of Ukrainian action today. Starting out with our first clip, we got to see some Russians getting hit inside of a trench. When you see some kind of an intro, the Wild Division, and now we can hear some song. Honestly, better than the opera singer. But we can see the drone lining up for its hit, trying to get just the right alignment, and now it's going on down, and it went right in. A hole in one.
the name of the drone was Force Majeure. Nice.
Oh, and that was a good hit. And with that, that's the end of the clip, but wonderful to see. Moving on from that one and into the next one near Vrbove, we actually got to see a Ukrainian soldier happy to show off his Boy Scout deed of the day, which was apparently destroying a Russian supply truck, which was great to see, and he was also very ecstatic about it.
Всем привет і добрий вечір. Ще тут свіженьке все горить. Подбираємося ми все. Ближче і ближче. І тут такий подарунок для вас.
Dude, this guy is literally gleaming with joy here. He's like, hey, everyone, oh, what's up? We got him. And, you know, and now he's showing off the truck.
Підерського камазика бабах. Ідемо гуляти далі. Всім гарного вечора. І тихої ночі. Віримо в ЗСУ. А це він розібраний спереді. І так, сука, буде з кожним.
Man. And this guy sat there and talked about the bot's mother at the end of it. He said, and so the bee will be with everyone. Man, I got to tell you,
wow.
that hits deep.
Oh, man, I'm telling you.
Oh, man, I'm telling you. And let's see here if I got a bot to assign that one to. And nope, sadly, actually, our chat's been bot-free for the last few minutes. I haven't even seen anyone removed from it. But anyways, wonderful to see this Ukrainian soldier so incredibly happy about destroying this supply truck. And he's got good reason to be. Moving on from that, we also got to see Russian forces in almost the same area getting blasted away by Ukrainian artillery. Here we can see the Russian trenches. All quiet on the southern front. See what I did there? But we can see the Russians kind of walking around right here. We can see two of them. We can't really see more than that right now. And it appears they're standing around like meerkats. Oh! Oh, goodness! Here we can see the Russians being atomized by the 155mm high-explosive shell.
You know what Ukraine's really doing here? You know those ant farm-like deals where the ants like crawl through the dirt and all that stuff?
Yes.
They're basically picking it up and shaking is what they're doing
Oh
here.
my god, dude, that literally is what they're doing. It looks like an ant farm. Dude, when you said that, I knew exactly where you were going with that. I was like, oh, it's shaking up the ant farm. But yeah, I think they did because I'm not seeing.
What sick person would shake up the ant farm, by the way? Obviously, the Russians are different, but who would pick up the ant farm and shake it?
Dude, I'm not going to lie, man. I think everyone who got an ant farm ended up shaking those things at some point.
Those sadistic bastards.
Man, look, an old Soviet sicko. He's shaking up the ant farm. But anyways, moving on from that, clipping on into the next one. We also got to see that the Ukrainians were able to capture a completely operational T-90M today. There it is, and it's theirs now. So hey, let's give them a little round of applause for the Ukrainians being able to attack the area, take it, and also capture the T-90M completely intact. No damage and very few miles. It has been rode lightly, unlike the bot's mother. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that bit of news and on into the next one, where we also got to see a T-80BV destroyed. No! Wait a minute. Is that honey badger?
Hey!
Oh!
It is!
Hey,
Look at him. That thing's got some teethies on it. Good God.
Man, that thing's going. Man, get that thing away from me.
Man, it's got those fangs on it. You know what I mean?
Man, it ain't cute like our honey badger. Oh my God. But anyways, there goes the tank. T-80BV up in flames. And with that, that's the end of that clip. But of course, beautiful to see. And love to see that they were able to knock out that tank. Moving on from that, and towards the area of Tokmak, we also have a new troop location map. Honestly, there wasn't really a lot that I noted as changes on this. This was updated as of today, unlike the last map that was updated around a week ago. But it's just showing the Russian force positions in the area once more that are in the I guess you could say the Robotyne battlefield general area. But moving on from that, we're now going to be moving on down into Kyiv. Well, actually, sorry, I forgot. We are missing one thing. Kryvyi Rih. Because while Sumi was attacked today, Kryvyi Rih was actually hit pretty heavily in the middle of the day. Again, the Russians attacked another market square, ended up killing one person at least. We're still waiting for a complete casualty report at the moment, but one person has been killed and an additional 50 have been injured in the explosion of the missile in the middle of the city center of Kryvyi Rih. Here's the video, and also, by the way, this is the birthplace of President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. We see the explosion right in the city center, killing one, heavily injuring around 50 people. One day the Russians will pay for what they're doing to Ukraine, and hopefully that day will come soon. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from Kryvyi Rih and on into Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy on day 562 of the war. And so, without further ado, here is the speech. And I gotta tell you, man, I hate it because Zelensky's speeches have been getting shorter and shorter throughout the war. It's making it harder for us to get restroom breaks, but here's the clip.
Yeah, what's he doing shortening them up like that?
Man, I know. Okay, because oddly enough, we have to tell you all this because we were so blown away by this. We're both big fans of this person's channel. We actually saw that Real Engineering, if y'all know who that channel is, subscribed to us publicly a few days ago. We haven't really been talking about that much, but we were super hyped to see it because we love his content and his videos. It's really great stuff. And considering that he's watching, I was like, hell, who is watching? Because you would never think that a 4.2 million subscriber YouTuber would be watching our channel to even subscribe to it. So we were completely flattered. And we also thank you for subscribing and enjoying the content enough to publicly subscribe to it. But beyond that, if he is watching, who is watching? If Zelenskyy is watching, Zelenskyy, I please request that you do extend the speeches to be a minimum of at least 3 minutes, because it helps us to be able to get in a restroom break during the stream. But with that, here's the speech.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці і українки. Дуже активний день сьогодні, багато міжнародної комунікації. Україну мають чути у світі, мають розуміти. Спільні емоції – це завжди велике джерело для більшої підтримки. Саміт Ялтинської європейської стратегії, різні зустрічі, інтерв'ю, зустріч з учасниками нашої санкційної групи, яка працює під керівництвом Андрія Єрмака і Майкла Макфола. Звіт про те, що вже досягнуто в роботі з нашими партнерами заради санкцій проти Росії, орієнтири на найближчий час. Зараз бачимо надто довгу санкційну паузу з боку партнерів і надто активні спроби Росії обійти санкції. Дуже важливо додати рішень вільного світу, який повинен захищати себе і захистити. І тим більше має уникнути будь-яких спроб використовувати компанії вільного світу, технології вільного світу, продукцію вільного світу, щоб воювати проти свободи. 3 пріоритети: подальші санкції проти енергосектору Росії, реальні обмеження постачання терористам чіпів та загалом мікроелектроніки та подальше блокування російського фінансового сектору. Цей санкційний наступ світу має відновитись. Напередодні Дня спорту зустрівся зі спільнотою наших спортсменів, тих, хто приносить шану світу для України, заслуговує оплески на аренах для нашого прапору, провів сьогодні важливу підготовчу нараду щодо міжнародного заходу, який плануємо на найближчий час, на цей вересень. Деталі трохи згодом. Готуємо для наших воїнів важливий оборонний пакет. І ще одне – шеврони. Хлопці, наші бригади, які я відвідував нещодавно в Донецькій області, в Запорізькій, ваші шеврони вже тут, в кабінеті на дошках. Я пишаюся кожною нашою бригадою, кожним воїном. Слава усім, хто б'ється заради нашої держави. Я дякую кожному і кожній, хто працює заради української сили, і всім, хто допомагає нашим людям долати цей час, долати наслідки російського терору. Обов'язково переможемо. Слава Україні!
And Herom Slava.
Herom Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, and that is the end of that halftime show as well. I thank everyone so much once again for enjoying that little speech and allowing us to have a quick little break, a quick little intermission in our show. But that is the only one we have in this entire channel's history. The one and the only. We are now about to be moving on into the next half of this show. We're going to be addressing all of the super chats that have come in, which help the channel to keep running. We're also going to be addressing all of the live chats as well, as many live chats as we can. I can't say all of them because sometimes time constraints lead to us only being able to address a handful of them. But of course, the premise of the live streams is that they are entirely free to watch. You do not have to spend a single second or a single minute or a single dollar to be able to enjoy this channel. It is entirely up to you whether you support the channel or not. If you do, the only way to really do it is through super chats, and the super chats allow us to keep this thing running, and you also get to choose how much you want to support this channel with. You can choose to support it with just $1, or you can even go up to $500, which is the limit on a super chat for a single night. And regardless whether it be $1 or $500, every single bit helps and counts in being able to help us to ensure that this channel will continue to run well into the future and continue to stay the way we are, the unique way that we've been able to deliver the news for 562 days. And so with that, take it away, Matthew.
All right, so moving on to our final poll and question segment. Our very first poll says, what should NATO do if allies don't pay 2% minimum of GDP on defense? 48% said protect them anyway, we have to. 20% said kick them out of NATO for it. 17% said give them less protection. And 16% said unsure. And for the folks that said give them less protection, I guess they're looking at it like an insurance policy, like to get the cheaper like insurance plan or something if they pay less. To me, it seems like I'm kind of with the enforcer. If they're not paying their 2%, then that's a problem. That is a minimum requirement. That is not a preferred requirement. I'm sure that NATO would be much better off if each person paid 5% of their GDP. But right now, it seems like 2% is too big of an ask. To me, that seems pretty low. And obviously, it varies. So if Romania has a much lower GDP than the United States, you're going to pay a hell of a lot less than we will to meet that requirement. I'm not sure exactly why they aren't paying it. I have a feeling it's more along the lines of these countries simply know that the U.S. will come in and pick up the slack, and that's what we've always done, so they're relying on that, so that way they don't have to waste their money on, defense spending. That's not a good thing to do. They should be enforced, but at the same time, if we can't enforce it and get them to pay the 2%, we can't simply just kick them out, because that wouldn't serve our purpose very well. But enforcer, what say you?
I would say that NATO countries not paying the proper percentage is something that is concerning. I don't really think there's a way to skirt around that, because that's the reason why we have a percentage GDP requirement in NATO, is because the NATO alliance, not just we, it is the entire NATO alliance, including these countries, have determined that the ideal way to have an army, but also have it not be incredibly burdensome to a nation's economy, is for them to spend 2% at the minimum of their GDP annually for defense purposes. I think that not meeting that requirement is something that is fairly serious. I don't think we should go around and threaten NATO countries. They are allies and friends after all, and threatening people is one way for them to just ensure that they will double down and not do what you want. I think that we should go around and encourage these countries in differing forms, of course the situation will be different for each of them, to once again up their defense spending. I honestly would have to disagree with you though, Matthew, on the idea that they are not spending as much because they expect for the United States to protect them. I think the reason why they're not spending as much is because there hasn't been an existential crisis to NATO in that area for so long, it just doesn't really even seem like it's worthwhile to spend anything on defense. Because up until 2022, it didn't really look like the Russians were going to do anything at all. I mean, sure, the Donbass conflict was a thing, but that wasn't anything that was going to directly threaten NATO or any of these countries. And we could see that after the war started, some countries like Germany actually are going to start eking their budget up towards 2%, along with the British, but it still isn't reaching 2%, but they're still starting to work towards that. With that in mind, I think they're not spending a lot because they're regional powers, and because they're regional powers and they're not like the United States having to look at every corner of the world at all given times and have the ability to do everything everywhere. They just went, what's the point of spending money on a military when we could spend it on other things like infrastructure or education or things like that seem more worthwhile to them, considering that there hasn't ever been a threat to them for over the past 30 years or so. But still, there is clearly a threat now. And especially with the rising threat of the Chinese, which aren't really a NATO concern, but still a concern nevertheless, and one that the Western world will have to respond to, even if it's outside of NATO's jurisdiction. I think that it's important to go around and remind every country and also encourage them strongly, pretty much make them in some way, but not forcefully, raise their spending to 2%. I know some people don't like the idea of hearing that European countries or countries at all have to meet the NATO spending standard, but I feel like that's a part of being friends. You know, NATO isn't just a protective alliance where you can get the overarching protection of larger countries within the alliance. It is supposed to be a group of friends, and each one of them is supposed to be able to have the ability to stand on its own, but the benefit of the alliance is that it will never have to stand on its own. It will have the dozens of countries that are in the alliance to also help them out as well. That's the whole point of it. And I don't think it's right. Go ahead.
Now, one thing I will say is I have to disagree with you on the fact that we're actually friends. NATO does not revolve around the idea that we're actually like legitimate like friends, like, you know, us in Germany are going to go out on the weekend and go have some lunch or something like that. It's purely business. I look at NATO like an insurance policy. Everybody contributes to the general fund, which is the 2% of their own defense spending, to make sure that they're able to stand on their own in case there is a threat, so that way they can contribute to the common defense. If they're not spending 2%, then they're basically freeloading. And right now, I mean, we can make up all kinds of excuses for it, but 2% of GDP, that is not very much to ask. That is actually pretty low to ask to be a part of something as influential as NATO. And for these countries not to be spending 2%, it's clearly freeloading no matter which way you put it. And these countries are basically being derelict in their own duties.
I would have to disagree with that, though, because while military alliances, you can look at them as solely business, we also have a lot of relations with these countries outside of a military alliance. They were also economic benefactors. We are benefiting off of every single alliance we have with every single one of these countries. And we also have tourists that go over there. It's not a business relationship like we had with the Soviet Union in World War II, where we were just friends with them because we had a common goal of defeating the Nazi Germans and the Imperial Japanese. We're friends with these people. You know, it extends beyond a military alliance. It's also an economic and also a cultural alliance for a good bit as well for most of them.
But do friends screw each other over though by not spending their 2%?
Well, they're not really screwing anyone over. They're just kind of, you know, not really doing what everyone said they were going to do. They're not meeting a quota. I mean, screwing us over would be handing over secrets of U.S. military installations inside of these countries to the Russians. That would be screwing us over. But I'd have to say that not meeting a quota, that's not really screwing anyone over. That's just being a little negligent.
Well, they're not screwing us over right now, but if a world war situation breaks out and we have to defend the NATO alliance, we'll find out how badly screwed over we are then when these countries can't contribute because they've spent so little on their defense that they're basically defenseless. That's when we're going to find out how badly screwed over we are. 2%, if they can't meet the requirement, I'm kind of the belief that we should come in and, you know, put some punishment on them for it. We can't kick them out. I want to make that clear. We shouldn't be kicking anyone out. But if the country wants to voluntarily leave the alliance because they can't contribute to the 2%, then I would say go ahead and leave it if they want to voluntarily do that. But we shouldn't kick them out.
That's not that smart either, because, you know, like, in my opinion, because while they may not be paying their percentage quota, I don't think it's a smart idea to tell people if you don't like it, leave. Because then we could just start seeing people leave, and then where do they go? It will most likely be towards the Russians. You know,
then they'll go freeload off the Russians then, because they're not going to pay their 2% to them either.
Well, hell, I would still rather have them in our sphere than the Russian sphere, and just lop people off and chop them off. That wouldn't be good for us. I mean, like, hell, it's taken us 70, 80 years to get to this point, and it wouldn't be smart to just go and start chunking things off to the Chinese and the Russians just because we got a little miffed. You know, like, it's like we can't go around, although these people are not paying their quotas, we can't go around and also, like, stomp their teeth in. You know, they are allies after all, and they're not just business partners. They are friends in the sense that every single country shares common goals. We have massive economic ties with each of them. I mean, hell, you can even ask the Romanians, which are probably one of the most fringe areas of NATO or really any of our economic ties in Europe, and there's still a lot of U.S. economic involvement there. So I would say that we don't really want to just give them the roughshod treatment, but there definitely needs to be a lot of encouragement and discussion and persuasion that everyone does need to meet the 2% quota, and also conduct military reforms where it's not just spending money, but it's actually effectively using the money for a proper military with proper training, like in Romania's case. But with that,
some of these leaders in these countries might have to give up their G-Wagons and their luxury items to properly contribute to the 2%, because where's the money going? Because they have the money, because if they're in NATO, they have the 2% to spend on GDP. They can make the money go to that area if they need to. So, they're clearly not spending it on stuff that matters, because some of these countries are corrupt. Some people have stuff they shouldn't have that are in the government, and obviously they're getting their perks and kickbacks.
Maybe, but really quickly, let me do a quick bit of math here. So, for Romania to technically be spending 2% of their GDP annually, they would be spending around $5.7 billion annually out of their GDP to their national defense. How much does Romania spend now? Romania military budget. Let's go here. And they spend, let's see here, 1,005. So they spend about 1.5 billion US dollars right now, meaning that Romania is probably one of the lowest contributors to their own defense. That's way below the 2%. It's like 0.4% of their GDP is going into defense. And that kind of stuff needs to be addressed. We need to be saying to countries like Romania, you are in NATO, and there is no way for us to kick you out, and we're not going to, force you to leave or anything if you can't meet the requirement, but you need to meet it. There's a threat in Ukraine right now that could start coming this way, or we may have to go meet that threat where it is right now. We need everyone to be ready to go. NATO needs to, while we're all friends, NATO also needs to be looked at like it is a military, like these individual countries are soldiers. Romania is a soldier. Poland is a soldier. The United States is a soldier. And while, everyone's not going to be on the U.S. level, everyone's not going to have 17 supercarriers and spending $800 billion per year, because that's certainly not possible. They need to be able to have a competent military for their size and for their economic output. So I think that they do need to meet that 2% quota. It's not and of course, there's a whole lot more to go on about with that. There's a lot to talk about there. And some people find it a very contended topic, and it is. A lot of people have made arguments about this. But while there are friends, I think that every friend should look out for each other, and we should always be striving for everyone to be at their best, economically, militarily, standard of life, and everything else in between. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, I'm putting up a little poll there, a very short one. Just curious what y'all think about that. And while I call for a quick, moving on to our next poll, it says, are most European countries prepared to handle major military threats without NATO? It looks like 70% said no, most of them cannot. 18% said yes, most of them can, and 12% said unsure. And I'm definitely with the 70%. I think most of them can't. Nothing wrong with that, because we're there to help them out, and that's why we're part of the alliance. We're all here to make sure everyone's protected, as long as they pay their 2%. But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, I feel like this is like the topic of the night. We just keep on going over and over and over. But I would say, honestly, most of them probably couldn't. At the moment, of course, they would have to mobilize, and that's something that we kind of don't really want them to have to do, because modern wars are not really built around the idea of mobilization. They're kind of built around the idea that we're already prepared. And that's why we changed the name of the Department of War in the United States to the Department of Defense. Because instead of mobilizing for war, now the Department of War was just preparing for defense at any given moment. And that's why the United States had a massive standing military all the way through the Cold War, and we still do. Because we are ready to start a war pretty much completely mobilized at any given moment, and even still keep it lean enough that it's not just a massive sink on the economy. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this is a real quick, simple poll. Is the NATO alliance based on real friendship or business? 61% said it's an even mixture of both, 23% said it's strictly business, and 15% said real friendship. And to me, 100% is strictly business. Countries cannot be actual friends with each other. It doesn't work like that. The people in charge of these countries are typically elected by the people, and they're there to represent the interests of the country. They're not there to make actual friends. They're there to make sure that their interests are represented. And in real life, it's not really about friendship. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that it is an even mixture of both. but I still would like to argue that it's mostly more of a friendship-based thing. It's not entirely business, because the NATO alliance doesn't exist in a vacuum. Tell me one country in the NATO alliance that we are an ally with that we don't have other dealings beyond militarily with. Every single one of them we have huge dealings with beyond just the NATO alliance. Like for the British, for example, the British alliance with the United States has gone back at least 100 years or more at this point. It is a special relationship. It's defined that way by both countries. It is, as far as diplomacy goes, a true friendship. Even if NATO didn't even exist as a concept right now, you could guarantee that Britain and the United States would be friends through and through. And and of course, Americans and Brits online, they all throw insults amongst each other, but that's just really banter. And the British love cheeky banter, and also some of them just don't like America just for the hell of it. But then some Americans don't like any other country for the hell of it either, so it's kind of fair. But anyways,
what about Hungary though?
Hungary, I mean, hell,
are we friends with them?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, kind of. Well, it's a little bit of a rocky friendship right now, but we've been friends with them ever since they've entered the NATO alliance and the European Union.
I don't know. To me, it seems like these countries, it's all a relationship of convenience. And obviously, NATO is a binding agreement, so they have to stay a part of it as long as they're a member of it. But any of these countries could start causing problems at any moment. Like, for example, Hungary. It hasn't always been a problem, but it has become a problem somewhat, especially since the Ukraine war broke out. And that's how fragile the entire alliance is any country at any moment could decide to start causing issues, and, so much for friendship.
Well, I mean, that's what countries do. I mean, also, that's kind of what friends do, is every once in a while have a little bit of a back and forth or an argument. I can't think of any friends that I've had that I haven't had a single argument with. Like friendships sometimes have little rough spots in them, and Hungary's kind of going through a weird moment, and also, it's a little weird to look at it like that, because are we going to argue that the BRICS alliance is a actual group of friends when the Indians and the Chinese are nearly murdering each other on the border every day? I mean, they're not even friends. They're not even business partners. Most of them are just mortal enemies with each other in some kind of like a loose alliance. But I would have to say, I still think we are largely all friends, especially the larger powers like Germany, the United Kingdom, France, Italy, and so on. And France, of course, is always doing French things. They've got to be weird to be weird on the national scale, well, the international scale. But beyond that, it is still an everlasting friendship. And it's not like BRICS, where there hardly is anything tying any of these countries together, and actually a lot of them hate each other and get into clashes with each other. The Western world and the United States are so interlinked with each other, it would be really hard to split the two apart ideologically and just act like either one of them could be thrown to the wind by the other and just live without them. That would be a pretty hard thing to say, especially in the modern world, with how the Western world has evolved side by side with the United States, and the United States has also evolved with the Europeans at the same time. But with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and it is now time to move on from our poll segment to our super chats yet again. And this one goes to Andre Mogusan, who puts in yet another $100 donation. That is the second one of the night. Huge thanks to you, Andre, for that. He says can't kick countries out of NATO, and each is a very valuable FOB. And again, on RO, look at what the territory brings defensively. And the Carpathians, Danube Delta, Black Sea, Rhine-Danube transport from the North Sea to the Black Sea, the oil and gas reserves, and 20 million extra manpower.
And that is absolutely correct, Andre. And I got to thank you for the massive amount of support. And I would agree, there should be no countries that are kicked out of NATO. But I also think there should be a good understanding, one that doesn't really exist now, that everyone must do their part. Like the people in look at it like this. I think this is a great way to look at it from my standpoint. Look at it as the citizens of Ukraine. Every citizen of Ukraine does their part in the war effort. Every member of NATO, much like every citizen of Ukraine does their part for their war effort, must do their part to make sure that the alliance is stronger than it was before. No one should be, trying to just sit around and maybe just like hope that everyone else will come to help them, or just feel like there is no threat. There is one. There is a real threat out there. We have to react to that. But I have to agree with you. Romania does provide a whole bunch of defensive I guess, defensive structures, natural ones, that you really don't get anywhere else. The Carpathians span through the entirety of Romania. It's this giant V-shaped dark green area that's largely forested in the country. That is a huge defensive position. It's very hard for armor to move through mountainous areas, and including the Carpathian Mountains in Slovakia and Ukraine, you've got a massive defensive network there that could protect this entire area of former Yugoslavia, or really the Balkans, from a further Russian push if one was to happen. Also, there are a lot of other countries like the Baltics as well that are fairly small countries, but they still serve a massive strategic advantage for all NATO members. It gives us an assault lane directly into St. Petersburg that's only 50 miles long. It's a massive benefit for sure, and Romania is certainly one that has loads of natural defensive elements that are just impressive, to say the least. And so I would certainly agree with you. Romania is a vital member, like every NATO member is, to the alliance, but I always think that there should be a push to improve every country and to make them better by the end of the day. It's not just a NATO need, it is also a national need, because I think Romanians should be able to take pride in their military and also their growing economy as well. They should be able to take pride in everything. And I think that it's not just a point of NATO necessity, is also a matter of national pride for each nation to make sure that they are also a strong member of the NATO alliance as well. And so with that, thank you so much once again for supporting.
Something that we've never considered is we should simply take all the NATO countries, put all of them together, and put them inside of Russia, and that would solve the entire problem.
Damn, dude. Dude, that would be brutal. Dude, the Russians just look up and see the whole continent of Europe falling on them from space. They go, horribly. Yes.
NATO's here, smush.
Dude, have no fear. NATO is here. Like the whole world.
You thought I was trying to make a valid point there for a minute, didn't you?
I thought you were.
I thought it was going to be a big point.
It's like we've been throwing like serious point after serious point out, disagreeing with each other all night, and then you threw that out. I was like, that's a complete 180. But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Andre. And also, Matthew, I think regardless tonight, because of how long the polls have been going on, hopefully you're okay with it, we're probably going to have a bit of a marathon link stream tonight, probably going for a bit of a long run. But with that, we are on
probably at 12 o'clock.
Probably at 12, probably so. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, the next one goes to Elder Media, who puts in a very generous $100 donation as well. And this one has no comment, which I hate to see no comment with a $100 donation. But thank you very much, Elder Media, for that support. And I think you threw in some support last night as well. So we do appreciate it very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
It hurts my soul. It hurts my soul, Elder Media. I thank you so much for the massive amount of support, though. But please, if you have a comment, Elder Media, and you want to throw one in, we would be more than happy to address it. Of course, people view the support as helping the channel to keep running, and it is. But I always want to make sure that we give y'all something in exchange for y'all support more than just the channel itself. Because, you know, I feel like the support does help the thing to keep running. It's gotta come in really for us to keep the thing rolling. But I still want to give y'all something in exchange, and there's really nothing to give because there's no comment for us to address. But still, I thank you so much once again for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. The support is massive and helps us to be able to eat pizza and coffee and do our jobs, which is cover this news and help to support the people in Ukraine through the Sunday fundraisers. And so thank you so much once again for the massive amount of support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have another super chat without a comment. This one is from Steve Watkins at work, who puts in a $50 donation. And of course, Steve, thank you very much for that support and always coming through very strong on the Sunday fundraisers as well. And we do appreciate it. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you for the massive support as well, Steve Watkins at work. One day we're going to get a super chat from Steve Watkins at home, and we're going to be like, that is mind-blowing. It's going to be more mind-blowing than the time that the U.S. said there's actually aliens out there somewhere. But anyways, thank you so much once again for the support, Steve Watkins, and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you help this channel to be possible, and you help us to be the enforcers at work on stream. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And we have a 20 from Reps77, who says, good to see all the peeps of the mighty Elos of A.
Hey, thank you so much for the support. And it is great to see all of the mighty peeps of the LSA. Some of y'all have been wondering what's going on with the flag. You know what? I'm going to use that as a segue to get into the flag. The flag kind of got put on hold for a while, but I've had an idea in my head that I've finally gotten fairly sorted out on what I would want it to look like, and we're going to send it to a designer to have it finally made. Another thing that I was thinking about doing, I haven't even told Matthew about this, because this is just something I throw around in my head, is I was thinking about possibly having some songs made for the LSA and, cost permitting, seeing about having a actual orchestra make the music and make a soundtrack or something for the LSA that y'all can get. I mean, I don't know how expensive that would even be. I don't even know. Like,
expensive as hell.
It would be a cool idea though. I was thinking it'd be great to actually have like an anthem for the LSA that was sung by an orchestra, but I don't know how much that would cost. The flag,
man, we might be broke, but damn, that anthem's gonna be busting.
Man, that anthem's gonna be booming. That thing's gonna be like bashing. But anyways, like the flag, getting back to the flag, we are going to finally be getting a flag out there. It's not going to be like a national looking flag or anything like that. It's going to have the word LSA on it. That's for sure. And I'm also thinking about doing something that would, you know what, y'all are just gonna have to wait and see it, because I don't even think I can actually physically describe what the flag will look like, but I'm fairly certain a lot of y'all will be happy with it. Some people will be unhappy with it, but it will be a final LSA flag. We will be finding a way to have that sent out to folks. I don't know if we can do it through Teespring, which is our merch store right now, because I don't know if they make flags, but we will find a way to make the flags and then also have them to where y'all can get them and ship them out to y'all. But still, thank you so much for the support and being proud of all of the LSA peeps, because here before long we might actually have an LSA flag once and for all. And also maybe I'll do this as a significant thing. We know the day that the LSA was founded. Like, we know the exact stream that happened on, and that'll be coming around again next year around March or April, I believe. I'll have to go back and get the exact day again. We might make that LSA day, like, you know how we have the Enforcer birthday for the channel, which is on September 5th. We may also have an LSA day, kind of like Army Day, where we celebrate the Lee Spring Army as it has existed for 2 years at that point, and then we'll release the flag on that day, maybe. But that's a good ways down the road, and will give us a lot of time to iron out everything and make sure that everything is good to go. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well and gives you all a little bit of information about what I've been thinking of behind the scenes. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we have another super chat from Elder Media. This time he throws in a comment with his $100 donation yet again, and thank you very much, Elder Media, for the second massive support of the night. He says, LSA, 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 Slava Ukraine. And let's toss some cash around, and thank you for everything y'all do.
And thank you so much for the support, Elder Media, and LSA, 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 Slava Ukraine. And thank you so much for tossing some cash around. Thank you for throwing a bone our way, because it helps us to keep the thing rolling. And also, I thank you so much for throwing in a comment, because I always love to have something to address, because it doesn't make me feel like I'm just like, taking in like just straight up cash. Because while we have to keep it running, and I always say that because, we always have to make that clear, because there's some blithering idiot out there who will make it sound like we try and hide that fact, and we don't. The support helps our channel out 100%. That's what it goes towards. But I gotta thank you so much for tossing cash our way, because while folks think it's just a kind contribution, it really does help us to keep the gears of this channel running. And folks like you throwing cash our way helps us to do this every day, 60 hours a week for me. I think it's like 40 hours a week for Matthew. And just throw in all of our time, all of our effort, and all of our energy and our soul and everything into this to make this possible. And so thank you so much once again for enjoying everything that we've been doing and supporting us, so that way we can make this thing possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much for throwing in a comment.
And also, I just want to say, in case you are curious, the super chat money, it does help fund our legal education, by the way. That's primarily what it helps fund, is our schooling. So it's going to a good cause, by the way, on our end. Obviously, on Sundays, we run our fundraisers for Ukraine, but at least we don't use the super chat funds to go take, vacations to foreign countries, buy new computers, gaming computers that are fully rigged out and stuff like that. We put it toward good use and good things. So we really do appreciate all the support from y'all and helping to keep us running. And also, we get to buy nice things to run the channel with, which helps improve the quality, like these nice new mics that we got a long time ago, because y'all remember how it sounded with the old mic, the Bing Shilling one that Enforcer had back in the what was it, briefing room days, I think.
Yeah,
it got much better once we got these new mics, for sure.
And so with that, Thank you so much once again. Matthew had to throw in the budget breakdown. And I try and make it sound a little bit more whimsical because I don't know if y'all like to hear that we're like using y'all's support for serious things like law school. I don't know if that makes it sound unfun to support the channel because everyone's like, yeah, law school. So I always try and make it sound fun, like coffee and pizza, but it really does goes towards everything. It goes towards gas because I'm guzzling gas at this point going to law school. It's unbelievable. And then it also goes towards food and bills because there's bills to pay.
And not brand new gaming computers with best graphics cards in the games and free vacations and, stuff like that.
Yeah, sitting there and going, oh, let me spend $2,000 probably on a one-way ticket on an airliner to go over somewhere and then spend thousands of dollars there. And then to also spend another $2,000 because I want to decide when I come back, I don't want to be on a set schedule, to then spend another $2,000 to come back and waste at least $4,000, maybe more than that, just to go for a vanity trip somewhere and not really help anyone out with that. That's what I'm not really into. So with that, I had to make sure to make a special claim on that because I'm sure it will be coming up at some point because, we sat there for a long time and, some of y'all are even still wondering who in the world are y'all talking about? And hopefully y'all will never know because I'm never going to give this idiot a plug. But way back in the day, we used to think, hey, maybe if we just stop talking about that idiot, maybe he'll go away. And then a month later, he would come and just blast us again. So now we just sit here and we just take the piss out of the guy whenever we can. And, he'll be miffed. He'll be whining and complaining and crying. But apparently he's not going to do that on stream anymore because according to what I was able to find out, he lost about 300 subscribers last time he did it. And that appears to have at least soured him a little bit for it. But now that I've said that, I'm sure he'll be coming back around the corner and doing it all over again because the harassment from this guy just never ends. And so we've decided it will never end from us either. And I know some people, and I've got to say this really quickly, some people are going to say, man, just drop it and move on. We have done that so many times. This has been going on for a year at least now. We've done that so many times, just tried to move on, and then the guy will sit there and blast us again. So I'm just like, you know what? Whatever. We're just going to keep on going on about the guy, just riff on him if we want. And that'll be what it is. It's not really to let y'all hear about it because we don't even really want y'all to know who the guy is. It's just because we know that he'll hear it because he watches these streams every night and then pretends like he doesn't, and then he'll be going and crying victim, although he's continuously harassed us for a year. So with that, we are on to the next one.
Enjoy that steak. Slavic Ukraine, you know what I mean? Eating steaks and going on fine vacations is all about Ukraine, right?
And then he sits there, and then what really struck me badly is that when he goes to Ukraine, because this guy did go to Ukraine, he sits there and talks about, I was over there helping people. And then he puts out a community post on his YouTube talking about the touch of liquor hitting people's lips, the jivey music at the nightclub. It's like, it doesn't even sound like you're helping out people, man. It just sounds like you're at a rave. And y'all know my standpoint on that. As a YouTuber covering the war, that looks just so damn disrespectful to all the folks that we're covering the news on to sit there at a nightclub and a rave. Those guys at the front are in a nightclub and a rave. I have never gone out and even done anything more than eat dinner during this entire war because I take this thing quite seriously, and I also think that that's just sickening to use folks' support to do leisurely things and act like it's all about me. And also, what the hell was that whole trip about? I mean, like, it wasn't even about supporting Ukraine. Like, whenever he got over there, he was like, oh, let's help out the guys in Ukraine, but only if it benefits me. Let's get the soldiers some drones, but only if I can go shoot a mortar at the Russians, so that way I look cool. It wasn't about, like, let me just get them drones for the hell of it. It's let me get a drone so I can do something.
Everybody knows to support Ukraine, you don't have to physically go there to support Ukraine. They have a ton of people over there working around the clock each and every day to make sure that these trucks get to Ukraine. It's by no means a necessity to actually physically go there personally yourself. We don't do it. We don't have the time to do it. That's the first thing. But even if we did, there's people literally there that are much more experienced that know what's going on. And then some unexperienced, person that knows nothing of what's going on, getting in the way and trying to, make a spectacle out of it.
And also, by the way, some people are saying, oh, by the way, this guy is friends with so-and-so and so-and-so. Hey, they can be friends with them all I want. My problem is not with anyone else. It's with that one guy. Like, everyone else, that's fine. One guy got dragged into it. I'm not going to say their name, but one guy got dragged into it. Apparently got fed a fake picture that we didn't even show. I don't even really know what the story was around that. Either we got a fake picture that had something photoshopped out on it, or they got given a fake picture that we didn't show on stream. I don't really know. I didn't really look into it too much. But then they got fed a story, and then they sit there and they react to it, and then I reach out to them and I'm like, hey, dude, that's just a lie. That's not true. And then never got a response back from them ever, and it's like, well, what the hell, it's like, we didn't do that to you, so anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
The next one goes to Terry Robinson, who puts in a $20 donation and says, thanks for providing such great war coverage and happy 2-year anniversary, and please take a question from the live chat, and Slava Ukraine.
Hey, and thank you so much for the kind words. While I sound like a guy who just smoked 40 packs a day, I went, hey, you got some change, but still, thank you for the support, helping the channel to keep on running, and thank you so much for the kind words. We have run this thing day in and day out, largely because I just have a commitment to do it. Hell, I promised. Like, that's the big thing to me. I promised to do this until the war ended, pretty much every single day, every single week. And honestly, Mondays feel bad to take off, but we have to do that so that way we don't just burn out. And burnout still does happen, and we just power through it. But still, thank you so much for the kind words and appreciating this channel, and we will get a live chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And the live chat question goes to Stantry, who says, do you think the war can still end with Putin alive?
Maybe. It depends. Because the Winter War ended with Stalin still alive, and that was an abysmal failure. So maybe Putin does end up living through the whole war somehow. But considering that folks have a way of dying in Russia whenever things don't go their way, I have a feeling he might die. It's like a 60% chance he'll die, a 40% chance he'll live. And so with that, I thank you so much for sponsoring that live chat. I hope we addressed that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for keeping this channel running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Drunky Monkey, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Drunky Monkey, as always, for that support. Hey! And he says, yo, LSA, can I get A/S/L? I'm not sure what that means, but he says, LOL, Slava Ukraine, and please take a live chat.
And it's my boy, Drunky Monkey. He is the drunkest of the monkeys.
He wants some American Sign Language, bliat.
Man, American Sign Language. I would do that. I don't know how in the world you would get that on YouTube, because I've heard from people that there are folks who are deaf or blind watching the channel. Some people want subtitles because some people are deaf and the subtitles don't really generate well. Sadly, we don't really know how to do that, and also these streams are so long and so much is said in them, it would be probably infeasible for us to do that. So sadly, that can't work. But American Sign Language would be a pretty neat idea. And also, here's one thing that I found funny, man. The one time I said that, and then people said, a hater said, oh, man, everyone's watching that guy's channel. It's like, well, yeah, they kind of are. When you have 7,000 people live every night, you have about everyone watching the channel at that point. Blind, deaf, soldiers, people who work at SpaceX, people who run 4 million subscriber YouTube channels. You have everyone here. So, it's like, yeah, obviously there's different people here. It's not like 30 people like the other guy has. But with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again for the support and helping the channel to keep on running.
All right, the live chat question goes to Joffrey Day, who says, what will Ukraine do if Elon Musk decides to remove Starlink for their drone capability? And hopefully they're making alternative arrangements by now to get away from Starlink, considering that whole situation.
I don't know what they would do at the moment, but there has to be some kind of a replacement out there. And honestly, I would say they probably need to start moving towards that and take it instead of continuing to operate on Starlink, because apparently Elon came out today and clarified why he shut off the Starlink system, and that's because the Ukrainian government requested that he extend its range temporarily to Sevastopol, so that way they could possibly conduct a mass drone attack to destroy the Black Sea Fleet in port. And then he said, I didn't want to be a part of a war. It's like, dumbass, you are a part of one. I don't mean to be rude or anything, but it's like, you have been a part of the war. They're operating a good amount of the internet infrastructure of the entire Ukrainian army for 8 months off of the Starlink system. What the hell do you mean you don't want to be a part of war? You are a part of it. That's just the stupidest thing I ever heard. And I don't mean to be critical. I always try and be kind of polite about that stuff. But damn, that didn't even make any sense. I was just completely blown away by that. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address it fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Aaron Shu, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Aaron, for the support. And he says, would standard rules of engagement be applied if a Russian decided to fire on the training exercises? And if Russia did strike on a ship, would it bring all of NATO into the war?
If Russia did strike onto a NATO ship, they probably would bring us into the war, depending on if sailors were killed or if the ship was sunk. If it's damaged, it didn't sink the ship or kill a crew member, we might avoid doing anything about it rather than a stern warning. And let's see, what standard, if a Russian decided to fire? Yes, standard rules of engagement would most likely apply. We don't know if the training group that we'll see, the joint exercise team, will have any live ammunition with them. They most likely will. I would expect that they would, considering the neck of the woods that they're in, or the neck of the sea that they're in. So I have a feeling that the standard rules of engagement would apply. They would most likely return fire if they were fired on, and if that was possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you, Aaron, for continuously supporting this channel and helping this to be possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Willie Jefferson. And thank you very much, Willie, for that support. There is no comment to address, but of course, thank you for helping to keep this entire thing running, and we do appreciate all of the support, including yours, Willie, very much. And of course, sir, what say you?
And it's my boy, Willie. Thank you so much, Willie Jefferson, for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. You didn't throw in a comment, but the support does help us out greatly, and I'm incredibly appreciative for that. And if you want to throw in a comment, please make sure to do so. We love to address comments attached to super chats, because I feel like I want to make sure that y'all get y'all's worth out of a super chat, rather than just the channel running and helping to contribute to that. I always want to make sure that we add something to that, so that way you're getting your bang for your buck, really. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a 20 from Renee Love, who says, thank you for the great community and caring about Ukraine. You guys are great humans.
Hey,
and thank you.
And thank you so much. Human. you freaking human. But anyways, thank you so much for the kind words, and also enjoying the great community. We have a lot less role in who's in the community than you would believe. I'm sure no one even thinks that we have a role in creating a community. But the community is amazing here. It is the best on YouTube. I don't say that to brown nose to all of y'all. It truly is. There's no other community out there that I've seen that tops this one. And so with that, thank you so much for the kind words, and thank you for the support, Renee Love, in helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you for being a part of this Leaf Spring Army.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Phil the Sky, who says, I love this channel, and thanks for the hard work you guys put in, and Slav Ukraine, and Viva LSA. And thank you, Phil.
And thank you so much, Phil, for the support, and thank you for enjoying this channel and helping us to keep it running. And of course, long live the Leaf Spring Army, or Viva la LSA. And also, where the hell is Jesus UCSB? So to give y'all a little bit of an update, Jesus UCSB is on Twitter. Like, I actually saw that he was active like yesterday, but I don't know why he's not here. Like Jesus UCSB is still a big member of the LSA. He's out there on Twitter. He's in the trenches, but we don't see him here on live on air. And I'm just hoping that he eventually comes back. Hopefully it's not his work schedule or anything, and he can come back, because I've been like, where the hell is he? Like, you know, he was a big part of this channel, and also a huge trooper of the Leaf Spring Army. But with that, hopefully he'll return as well. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping the channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. Excuse me. The next one goes to Marion Deemer, who puts in a $20 donation and says, bubbles up. Slav Ukraine, Hiram Slava, you guys rock. And thank you as well, Marion.
And thank you for the support, Marion Deemer. And we will make sure the bubbles to up. I don't know what we're bubbling up. Maybe a submarine after it gets hit. Oh, hey, by the way, everyone, I forgot. There was one little bit of news that I didn't even color code for today. Let me do that real quick, because we actually got to see a little bit of a North Korean military parade overnight. It's the 75th anniversary of the regime's founding day. And we can see some pictures here of their military parade, and oh, by golly, look at the bottom. You thought that the North Korean military couldn't get more ghetto, and then they do this. Dump truck MLRSs and tractor APCs. Y'all ever seen anything like that before? Because I have not. I literally have never seen anything like that. Like, tractors were used in Ukraine by farmers, not by the North Korean army. That's something new.
You know what that looks like? It looks like a rip-off Massey Ferguson. The blue one does.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does.
It's like the midget version of a full-size Massey Ferguson.
Dude, that thing looks like... Dude, you know that thing's from China. You know it is. Like, they import those things across the border with the dump trucks as well. I bet you we could probably find these somewhere in China. But
let's see, what would it be called in China? Not a Massey Ferguson. It'd be called like a Hassey Wergeson.
Let's see, in China, let's see, what would it be called? It would be called the Happy Sunshine Working Tractor or something like that. You know, it'd be some stupid name, and it'd be a complete ripoff of a Western tractor, 100%. You know, Matthew, I so want to play that freaking song, but I'm not going to. We're just going to act like that song doesn't exist. We're just going to leave it alone, but thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you for reminding me to throw something up on screen there real quick. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you, Marion Deemer, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running and being a trooper. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Wraith Cat, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Wraith Cat, for that support. And I believe that is their first super chat ever on the channel, so big thanks to you for that. And it said, came in late to the show and love what you guys do and the silliness, and you gotta have that. Oh, I'm telling you. Oh, and can we recap the highlights before you sign off?
And thank you so much for the support, Wraith Cat. And also, hey, that's perfectly fine that you came in late to the show. We're happy that everyone comes in at all. Like, we're completely honored that like 7,000 people showed up tonight to watch the show. Live, contiguous viewers. By the way, I don't mean to tell you all this, but I heard this somewhere, and it's a little bit of a rumor, and I was wondering if it was true. So, maybe y'all want to see. I don't know, Matthews. Let me take a moment to explain this to some people. Apparently, something was found out about an interesting way that the YouTube algorithm works live streams. If you have 2 tabs of the stream open, and both of them are being displayed on your computer screen at the same time, apparently that counts as 2 viewers. There's nothing wrong with saying that, because the spiffing Brit got away with doing that. But I saw that, and I was like, wow, you can actually do that. And it actually worked. He got up to like 30,000 contiguous live viewers because everyone just opened up second tabs and had them running on their computer screen. Not saying that y'all do it.
We don't encourage that, by the way, because that might violate YouTube's terms of service, and we wouldn't want to do that.
No, we don't want to do that. But I found that really wild and pretty bizarre to hear, and I was like, what? You can do that? But don't do it. Don't do it, everyone. Really don't. But anyways, thank you so much for enjoying what we do, and also coming in late. It's better to be late than never. And also, thank you for enjoying the silliness. It's a very unique way we run the channel. A lot of people like to be tactical or act like it's a crying fest, like hell, really, CNN. I mean, CNN is like the major news company that makes the war a whole crying fest. Like, the Ukrainians could have won. They could have won the war, and CNN would be like, they won, but at what cost? And I'd be like, you know what? Just shut the hell up. It's like all these folks just won the war, and now you're gonna make it a damn tragedy. But anyways, I would have to say, thank you so much for enjoying the silliness. We try and make this as light as possible, and also get out all of the important news. And we would recap the highlights, but sadly that would add too much time to the stream. Because there are so many more questions that we have to try and answer. But if you would like, you can always go back to the beginning, and you can always start from there. It's not out of the question. It is a fun stream to watch through and through. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Wraith Cat, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Sick Lid, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Sick Lid, for that support. They said, I am a part of the Leash Spring community and the only family I have.
And thank you so much for the support, Sick Lid. And I mean, like, I don't even need to kid about that, but damn, that's deep. And that's crazy, because some people do say that the Leash Spring Army is like the only friends they have. And that's amazing to think that this community that just came rising up out of the internet, out of nowhere, has ended up becoming a family for a lot of people. And I got to thank you so much, Sick Lid, for being an old guard, because you've been around forever, and also being a part of that immortal Lee Spring Army family, because through the Lee Spring Army, there is life. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I didn't mean to make that sound like some kind of a communist slogan there. I was like, through the party, there is life. No. It's not supposed to be like that. But still, thank you so much for being a part of this Lee Spring Army, Sick Lid, because you have been a part of it for such a long time. And I hope that all the friends in the Lee Spring Army are great ones, because I'm sure they are. And so with that, thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
Oh, I'm telling you, who has time for friends when you work 24/7? Oh, bliat. Man, I'll tell you what, ever since we started law school and doing this stream, it's like I've had no time to do nothing outside of that. That's crazy. Fridays hit a lot different when you're actually busy all the time. I'm really super thankful for that on Friday. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat, we have a $15 donation from Margaret Hemsley. And thank you very much, Margaret, for the support. She says, Enforcer Matt, question for you. Is your previous degree helping you understand the situation in Ukraine and hence the world now, and put this towards snacks when you watch Oppenheimer? And thank you for all you do. And Margaret, I will say, first off, thank you very much for the support. And I still need to watch Oppenheimer. I hadn't had the time to do that either. And I would say my previous degree helping me understand the situation? If I'm being perfectly honest, no. The degree was more about ideology than it was about actual theories and things like that, sadly. I'm not going to go any further than that. I think y'all know what I'm talking about. And I sort of already knew going into it how it kind of worked because I studied it on my own automatically because I was interested in it. So it did somewhat, but not to the way you probably think it did. But that does answer the question. And Forster, what about you? How did that history degree help you?
George Washington crossed the Delaware River. It hasn't helped me at all. Like a single bit. I may as well, like the degree doesn't even transfer over. I mean, it doesn't have any applicable knowledge. I mean, the best thing is that I kind of know like what's happening in some things, like what they're talking about when they talk about a steamer in some of the lawsuits. They're talking about like a steamship from the Cunard Line. But beyond that, it doesn't really help me out at all. So that would be my answer, is that it doesn't help me with my degree. Well, it doesn't help me with law school whatsoever. But still, thank you for the support and helping us to continue to go to law school, so that way we can continue to try and learn. And learn we shall. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we've got the same idiot coming in again. This one in the live chat, they keep making new accounts. I hadn't seen anybody do that since that crazy guy Lee came in here, so they're a special type of crazy. But moving on to our next super chat, we have a 15 from Duncan VR, and big thanks to Duncan for that support. And also, he does come in strong with the animal noises, and he says "ba mooba, quack ba." Kermit says, "Oh man, I'm telling you. Baba moo, put this towards gaming computers fun." Oh man, meow, ba woof, oh no respect, oh damn son, where'd you find this? Baba moo, quack roof, Romania. Unintentional.
Dude, he threw that in at the end. He slid that
I threw that in actually.
Oh man, I thought I was like that was brutal. But still, thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR, and helping the channel to keep on running. Man, that add-on was good. And I also got to thank you so much for throwing in the usual animal noises and also being an icon. You are an icon, Duncan, and I got to thank you so much for that. And also, just thank you for being a legend. It's so funny to have your super chats come in like that every single night, and that was a great one, I got to admit. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And with that, by the way, Matthew, really quickly to address that bot. So, so I guess a guy.
Don't do it, unfortunately. They keep coming back doing that. Don't give them any time of day.
But it is completely intentional. Oh man. But anyways, we're on to the next one.
And also, real quick, I've seen several people ask, including Sam Paladin, come on, man, how'd your Friday exams go and how do you feel about it? I don't feel that bad about it. It was a citation test for the Blue Book. I don't like Blue Book crap. Very tedious and very odd the way they tested us on it. They gave us a time limit on a lot of questions covering a ton of different citation rules. Some kids were freaking out about how the exam went. A lot of people were. A lot of people didn't finish the exam, so that tells you how it was. I'm confident that I probably made a B on it once they curve it. But in real life, you don't really get put on the clock for citations, so I don't know why they tested it like that. But several people were very distraught, looking like they wanted to drop out of law school because of it. So, it didn't go that great, but, it is what it is. And Forster, would you like to weigh in on it?
No vision, no passion, but moving on.
No mindset.
No mindset. But moving on to answer the question, I would say, I think it went fine. I didn't feel that bad about it. Everyone didn't end up answering all the questions for the most part. Few did. So largely, I expect that I will be riding the wave because they actually curve all of the grades in law school. So if everyone ends up making C's and D's, they roll everyone up into making B's. So I have a feeling that I'm going to be riding that wave like freaking surfing bird. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. I didn't feel that bad about it, really. I felt like I largely knew what I was doing on most of the questions. But watch me get the test back and make an F. That would be my luck because, by the way, everyone, I really didn't get to study for it that much. Probably like Matthew was able to, because while Matthew was studying, I was sitting in here and getting these streams ready most nights as soon as I got back home after eating supper and everything else. So I didn't really have a lot of time to study, but I still feel like I did pretty well, all things considered. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Dion Yurchenko, who puts in a $20 donation and does not leave a comment. And thank you very much, Dion, as always, for that very generous support. And I was going to say something else, but I forgot. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I've got to thank you for putting in the Doge. This got the #1 flag in samurai armor. Absolutely poggers. Matthew, you know, that just felt like I was that guy, Matthew, from Britain, who said, "Happy birthday to Big Chungus." You know who I'm talking about, Matthew?
Oh, yeah, Chungus.
Honestly, man, that made me cringe, but it made me bust out laughing at the same time. It was hilarious. But anyways, thank you so much for the support, Dion Yurchenko, and I love the little super sticker. The Samurai Doge never gets old, and the #1 flag being waved around is great. Maybe that ought to be the flag of the LSA. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Communist Meth, who's a longtime channel viewer, by the way, and also good to see it once again. And they put in a $10 donation. It says, well, no, not to be political, but the reverse was due to the last, let's see here. Let's see. That sounds wrong, but let's see.
All right, we got a review coming in.
I think that might be okay because it's just talking about the facts. There's no opinion being taken here. It says, not to be political, but the reverse was due to the last admin's actions toward Cuba after the thaw. As a Cuban, I am not for the party, but I keep up with the events frequently.
Thank you for the support, Communist Meth, and that is in reference, everyone, just in case y'all are wondering why in the world is that being brought up. And it's a valid point that they're bringing up. It's brought up because we were actually talking about the Cuban situation earlier on stream, way early on at the beginning, and that super chat came in around that time. To go back to that, yeah, you were entirely right. It was largely a policy change of the governments to start being a little bit more unfriendly with the Cubans, but I think that was I think the idea or the premise behind that at the moment was that the Cubans weren't really moving in our direction, more out of the old Soviet sphere that they used to live in and towards ours, and then we just kind of cut them off. I can't say, while I can try and explain the logic that I believe was behind that move, I can't really say if it was a good one or not, because historically, it usually takes a couple of decades, like 2 decades or even 3 decades, to have economic partnership with a communist country and eventually wear them down through that economic relationship. It takes time. But at the same time, they weren't moving in that direction. So you could really argue it either way, whether it was a good move or not. Of course, I'm not going to make a statement on that because that would be a partisan stance, and we have a no politics policy on this channel, and that specifically involves picking a side. So I can't really pick a side, but that is largely the reason why Cuba is no longer able to trade or have some decent dealings with the United States. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Joel Gibson, who says, drug money from my buddy Matt and his long bad plague that he's got there, and just a little help from Columbia, Missouri. Yes, indeed. And by the way, just for everyone to know, that refers to some over-the-counter stuff from CVS.
Aw, man.
That doesn't refer to anything bad.
Not
Not that type. Not his type. But thank you very much. It was a little bit pricey, but I actually got an inhaler in case y'all were curious. I've never had one of those in my life. I haven't used it yet. But maybe hopefully one day I'll never have to use it. But still got that little cough going on. It won't go away just yet, even though I'm feeling better from the sickness. I still got that little cough. I'm not sure if that's ever going to go away. Hopefully it's not permanent. But Enforcer, what say you?
Oh boy, I'm gonna have to take a minute out of my stream where I piss on my supporters to thank you so much for the money. It's going to help me to get the high quality hashish. Sheesh. Thank you so much for the support, Joel. And by the way, that's satire. That's satire. That is not us. That is satire. We are completely sober, straight-laced every single way. I don't even drink. But I do thank you so much for supporting Matthew's cough medicine fund for his long plague. And also really cool to know that you're in Columbia, Missouri. Man, when Joel Gibson comes around, Matthew, kids are getting out of school for a snow day. It's in Columbia, that fun. It's a snow day, that's for sure. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, Joel. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Oh man, it's snowing outside. Man, when it snows in Columbia, it's trouble. But up next, we have a $10 super chat from Blue Flam 777 LSA, who says Putin's propagandist on TV said nuclear war is fine because patriotic Russians will go to heaven, and question to the chat.
Oh, that's that goofy crap. They say the stupidest stuff on Russian state TV, don't they? I don't even really find most of it worth addressing anymore, because it's just like the most stupid drivel. Like, you know, like, what, you're gonna wish your whole country to die? Like, that's stupid. You know, it doesn't.
They said all dogs go to heaven, blять.
Man, well, I mean,
Well, not that dog.
well, I mean, the Russians are some freaking dogs, man. But anyways, thank you for the support.
That dog gets the exception. He's going to hell.
The dog straight to Pizza Hill. We call it. Well, I can't say that, but actually, we'll make sure to get a live chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and let me get rid of this other idiot that came in here, another bot, and they're gone. So bye-bye. So moving on to that live chat question, we have one from JC Atkins. He says, will the Bolsheviks pressure Turkey into blocking USN warships from the Bosphorus?
It doesn't seem like they will. It looks like they're letting them straight through, and I'm kind of happy to see that. I like it personally. I like it a lot. And so with that, thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat. I hope that addresses that fairly well. And with that, we were on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Rangers Rule, who puts in a 10 and says, thank you, enforcers and LSA friends, as you all rock.
And thank you for being a part of that LSA. And thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. Because folks like you help this channel to keep on rolling. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Junebug72, who puts in a 10 as well, and says, hello, I haven't been on enough, and how do you feel about Rustem Umarov replacing Alexei Reznikov, and have a good evening, and thank you.
And I thank you so much for the support, and welcome back, Junebug. And also, to answer your question, it sounds like we're on a roller coaster, man. But anyways, I don't really know how I feel about that right now, because I always like to go into things optimistically. Hopefully it'll be better than the last Minister of Defense, but we don't really know because we don't have a track record with the guy right now. So I'm going to give it a moment. I'm not going to condemn him. I'm not going to support him unconditionally. I'm just going to wait and see if he's a good Minister of Defense, and then I'll make a judgment call. I don't want to condemn him out the gate, possibly. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, and you have a good evening too, Junebug72, and thank you for being here with us tonight. We miss every single viewer of the Lee Spring Army when they're gone, especially when we get to know y'all really well. And please come back. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Mamba Mentality, who puts in a 10 and says, so according to Orc Logic for ex-Canadian, are actually Americans. They are just brainwashed to believe that they are a different nation, ? Oh, brother. Someone educate this orc. Wait, can you educate an orc? That's a good question.
Man, that's deep. That's deep. But yes, that would be the Russian logic. They would think that exactly about the Canadian-American relationship. And I don't really think there's any educating this guy. Probably the best thing to do... TM62 anti-tank mine. That's probably the best. So with that, hope that addresses that fairly well. Thank you for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and then we got another idiot coming in the chat right there. That's a real idiot right there. But anyways, moving on to our next one. I had to get an extra roasting on that one. But moving on to our next one, we have a $10 donation from Blue Flam 777 LSA or 777, who says gravity is one of your fundamental forces in our universe, but if you remove it, you get gravy. Also, Austria is not a part of NATO. And question to the chat.
And also, you are correct. Austria is not a part of NATO. I think I misspoke on that earlier, Blue Flam, and I thank you for correcting that and pointing it out. Also, I love gravy. I don't know if y'all can tell, I'm a little bit of a chunky boy, but I love gravy. Gravy is good on everything, and I think Matthew can agree with me with that. Gravy is good. It's great. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, and we will make sure to get a question from the chat.
All right, and the question from the chat goes to Miss Disa, who says the UN Secretary General has offered Sergei Lavrov a 4-point deal to get Russia to return to the grain deal, and at Enforcer Matt, thoughts? And for me, I would say that Russia probably is not going to return to the grain deal because they're taking all the necessary actions to prevent it from actually being allowed to take place. They're trying to stop Ukrainian grain ships at all costs, And now we've learned that apparently NATO has been providing some type of escort or something to let the grain ships through, and that's probably one of the only reasons they've been able to get through. So anything on Russia's part on the grain deal, probably not going to happen. But Enforcer, what say you?
Can you reread that again, because I think I lost it.
It says the UN Secretary General has offered Sergei Lavrov a 4-point deal to get Russia to return to the grain deal.
That's a very interesting statement there. I don't really know where that would go. It seems like the Russians are refusing the grain deal altogether now, regardless. So hopefully we'll see that go somewhere. But with that, I thank you for the support, and I hope that addresses that somewhat well. It wasn't really that good of an address, but I hope it was decent. And thank you so much once again for the support. And also, Matthew, am I correct, because I actually didn't see it in the live chat, am I correct in your response that that was the one? Was that one?
It looked like a fake account, but I wouldn't doubt if it was the real one personally, because, you know, they've gone to the dark side.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
You notice we mentioned free vacations to Ukraine and gaming computers, and all of a sudden I start seeing people pop up that are from that community.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't it kind of weird? They love watching this channel.
And you know what's funny is that they'll sit there and they'll go, oh, war profiteer. And then when they watch this guy get a free vacation on their expense, and then also a brand new computer, just trying to live high on the hog, then they sit there and go, he deserves it. And it's like, what, so we don't? Like, it's like...
Yeah, really. And so we've already debunked the war profiteer argument. And if you take that logic and apply it to anyone who reports on the war, news reporters are all war profiteers, are all evil. Anybody that reports on war, period, and makes any type of money relating anywhere close to it to report on it is evil. But obviously, that's a stupid position to take.
But you know what it's all about. It's all about he's angry because he didn't get to get on the 1-year anniversary show because he sat there and blew us off until we filled up all of the slots for guests. And then he got pissed off, and now he wants to make this a never-ending harassment thing. He's doxed us.
That's the MO. Punk people and then get upset when they... blow you off in return. Just try to punk anyone you can. Nobody can pay you back for it, but we can punk you.
We sit there and we send this idiot emails, just trying to be like, hey, dude, man, no pressure or anything. Not those were later. Like the first emails that I sent, where I was like, hey, dude, let's quash the beef, man. I don't even have a problem with you. It's with someone else. You've misunderstood it. It went out of my way to try and quash this thing, and then bring him on our show, and then he blows me off for a whole month. And he always brings up this excuse. He always talks about his dying grandmother. And I get that. I get that part of the whole thing. But at the same time, he was active on his Discord server every single day over that month that he never responded to me, and he can't respond. It doesn't even make any sense. The whole story is all made up bullcrap. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. And also,
all right,
thank you for the support.
And the next one goes to Joseph M. Seco, who puts in a $10 donation and says, heard the company never turned on the Starlink sats before because they were over Crimea and afraid of repercussions. So there were no sats to turn off, and the link is here. And Joseph, I did hear something about that. That's why I was very skeptical reporting on the Elon situation last night, because a lot of people like to give Elon crap just because he has a little bit of money. That seems to be the end, the end thing to do these days. But the truth is, I like to just look at the facts. And to be honest with you, Elon has said something along the lines of he didn't turn it off, and then he sort of said he did turn it off. So I'm not really sure what the actual story is on this. And I'm going to reserve judgment for the time being because I don't want to say anything that's false. So Enforcer, what say you?
And also, thank you for the support as well, Joseph. And from what I understand, from what I understand, there was a request to extend the access into Crimea, and then they refused. And also, from what I understand, I think they shut off the whole network for a short while. But I don't really know. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something there. But I do thank you for the support, Sika, and I think that is largely correct. But, of course, we'll be trying to wait and get a little bit more of the story, and I'll be trying to figure out how to unwind that ball of yarn. But still, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and we have a 10 from J.C. Atkins, who says, this is for the pizza fund from your favorite LSA Navy NCO and his dog, Ginger. And I look forward to buying the flag. And please take a question from the live chat.
And thank you so much for the support, J.C. Atkins. and thank you for enjoying this channel and helping it to keep running. We will be having that flag out eventually. I can't give a guarantee you when, but it will be eventually out there, and I can't wait for everyone to be able to get one. And so with that, thank you once again, and let's get that live chat.
And the live chat goes to Turning Off Your Gaslights, who says, has the U.S. Navy ever been in the Black Sea before, historically?
Yes, they have. They have been in the Black Sea several times throughout history, really, ever since the NATO alliance was founded. But it's not often, because the Black Sea is largely, in U.S. naval terms, a pond and kind of a dead end. There's really nowhere else to go once you go into the Black Sea but out. So usually you don't really see anyone going beyond there. Going in there. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Billy Gomes, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Billy, for the support. He says, I know a graphic designer in Odessa and a company in Kyiv that prints t-shirts, I'm sure flags too. If you want the flag come from Ukraine, hit me up. Better than Made in China printed on it.
Hey, that's a really cool idea. That might be pretty neat. And that also would probably help some of the soldiers of Ukraine to easily be able to get the flag as well, because I know some folks out there in the Ukrainian army would also like to get that flag, and it would be cool to see them waving on top of tanks, APCs, and just the infantry carrying them. But still, with that, thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you for giving a really nice suggestion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Steve T, who puts in a 10 and says, if the NATO warships draw out Russian warships to spy on them, would them becoming a target to Ukraine not be seen as an escalation?
Wait, reread that one again?
If the NATO warships draw out Russian warships to spy on them, would them becoming a target to Ukraine not be seen as an escalation?
It would be seen as, it may be seen as an escalation, perhaps. Honestly, if Russian warships arrive in the area, that will be an escalation regardless whether the Ukrainians fire on them or not, considering that those two countries are belligerents. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, Kathy Tucker said, you have to make stickers of that flag so I can put one on my RV. And if Enforcer can get us a final flag, digital format, I will put it on all the merch like we typically do. So that way, if y'all want it on like a shirt or a sticker or something like that, y'all will be able to get it. So as long as we have like a digital form of it that isn't just on the flag itself, I can put it on the merch. That's what's needed for that. So I will be doing that. So good request, by the way. And then moving on to our next super chat, we have a 5 from Slava Free Something, who says, this is random, but I just found out your national anthem isn't about its founding, but your next war with Britain in 1812. Interesting story to it.
A very interesting story, actually, and I thank you so much for the support. To quickly go through that, because it's 12:02 now, and I was like, man, it's getting late. But it was Baltimore in 1814. The British had just beat the American army at the Battle of Bladensburg, just north of Baltimore, and marched onto the city. At the same time, the British Navy had sailed up the Chesapeake Bay to the port of Baltimore, which looks very different than it did back in the day, and begun to bombard this fort right here, Fort McHenry. Throughout the night, the British would bombard the fort endlessly for hours, and there was a massive U.S. flag. It was a 15-star, 13-stripe flag that flew over the fort throughout the entire night. The problem is that the fort was being bombarded so heavily that the entire thing was shrouded in smoke and you couldn't see the flag. Also, it was pitch black at night, also makes it pretty difficult to see. So an attorney, Francis Scott Key, was on board of one of those British ships during the battle, trying to negotiate the release of American prisoners held on board these ships, and he watched the entire bombardment unfold. In the morning, the U.S. flag was still flying over Fort McHenry, showing that the U.S. garrison at Baltimore had been able to hold off the British Army outside of the city, and also had held the fort as well and did not surrender from the bombardment, which you have to remember is very awe-inspiring, especially considering the absolute firepower that was brought just against the fort, not against the garrison on land in the city. And it was so moving to Francis Scott Key that he then wrote a quick little poem. The poem actually didn't have the way we sing it now, where it goes, oh, say, can you see? It wasn't actually sung like that at the start. That actually came later when people put the drinking song, Anachron from Heaven, with the Star Spangled Banner lyrics, and they combined the two, and then we got the anthem, the way it's sung nowadays. Back in the day, it was actually sung completely different, and honestly, it sounded worse. You can find one version of it on YouTube in its original form. It was okay, but I think the one that's put to the drinking song tune or melody is a lot better, the modern one. But still, thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, I think the anthem is a really neat one. I think the U.S. anthem is certainly an iconic one when done right. Celebrities do it wrong every time. I know that's a hot take, but I think they do it terribly most of the time. Very few of them do it well. But so, with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, shout out to Opus and Yves Timmermans for putting in a 5 each and without comments. And thank you both very much for that support. We also have a 5 for CK Bold, who says take a live chat question. And of course, we will as usual. And the live chat question is going to go to J-Man, who says, what do you think will be the major technological and tactical changes after the war's over?
It's all going to be revolving around drone warfare at this point. That's very clear. Drone warfare is going to be like the implementation of battlefield radios in the Second World War in mass. It's going to just be game-changing for whoever can implement those as much as possible in every single way. So that's certainly what's coming out of this war, is more drone innovations and technological progress. And so with that, I thank you for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Anime Gaming, who puts in a 5 and says, Abrams is America's baby. It's about the reputation of America. If any get destroyed immediately after deployment, it will be bad press.
Oh, I wouldn't even worry about that. I do thank you for the support, though. But something like 500 M1 Abrams have been destroyed in combat at this point. A lot of them were destroyed in the hands of the Iraqis during the war with a certain terrorist group that apparently gets you in trouble if you say their name, but you all know who it is. It's ISIS. So hopefully that won't get me in trouble for saying it as two separate words, the eyeball and your sister. I don't mean to say it like that. It came out wrong. But anyways, a lot of them were destroyed in the hands of the Iraqi army. So it wouldn't be bad press to see one get destroyed, because we already know that they will end up getting destroyed. It's just that they're, it's not great to see it. And also the Russian propaganda machine will go wild. But still, thank you for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Epic Trains Canada, who puts in a 5 and says, where does Napoleon keep his armies? In his sleeves, they said. Also, Igor in Slav Ukraine.
Igor! And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, I like the joke. Do you know how Germans tie their shoes? So we're not even going to continue on that one. That one ends there. Y'all can find the answer for that one. But with that, thank you for the support. And we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Yves Timmermans yet again, who puts in a 5 and says, I followed the channel from day one, but had to be in tactical silence. And greetings from Dubai. LSA Desert Rats, LOL. And a question from the chat, please.
And thank you.
Man, Desert Rats, I'm telling you, y'all got some nice cars over there. I see y'all got some Lamborghini police cars. Y'all got some new like SUV looking thing. That's like the police car thing too. Y'all got some nice cars. Oh, I'm telling you.
Oh man, I'm telling you. And really cool to know. That's actually crazy how all of the Lee Spring Army's viewers are truly from everywhere around the world. And we even have viewers in Dubai. Dubai! Can y'all believe that? That's crazy. That's like a viewer being from Washington, D.C. Like, it's like that kind of reverence. Pretty wild. But thank you so much for the support. And also, that's just so neat. That's really cool. I wish we... don't dox yourself, though. But I wish we knew what part of Dubai you were from. Because you told me you were from, like, the palm tree thing. That would actually be pretty wild. That would be pretty crazy. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. And also, really cool to know that you have been watching the channel since day one. A lot of people have been watching it since the dawn of time. And so many of y'all are coming forward now and being active in the live chat and helping the channel to keep running. And I honestly think that is just so cool. Really neat. And thank you so much once again for helping the channel to keep rolling. By the way, Maddie, do you know where the the Siri machine comes from? It comes from this island right here. See? Siri.
Oh. What do you know? It's got an international airport on that little bitty island. What are you, joking?
Look at that. Look at that.
International?
It's international. Wow.
Man.
Dude,
I bet they built the island from the ground up, too.
Man, the Iranians and their silliness. Goodness, man. But Syria's doing pretty well for itself nowadays. I gotta admit, pretty impressed. But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Georgiev, who puts in a 5 and says Bulgaria is doing a big rearming and we are buying planes, armor, and stuff.
Man, I thank you for the support and sharing that with us. And it's good to hear that Bulgaria is buying stuff. Dude, the government sits there. We are giving more money to the army. And then the Bulgarian parliament says, why? And then they say, stuff. And that's it. That's all they say. That's the budget stuff. But still, thank you for sharing that with us. And it's good to know that Bulgaria is going to start stepping up and doing its part to help out the NATO alliance. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and thank you for sharing that. And with that, we are on to the next one.
If it was any other country that was buying planes, armor, and stuff, that would be translated roughly to old crappy planes, broken armor, and G-Wagons and Bentleys, if it was any other country. But moving on to our next one, we have a $5 donation from Jexa the Sin, who says, LSA flag, 2 cross leaf springs under a blow-up Bobcat like a Jolly Roger flag.
And that's a pretty cool idea, and I thank you for the support. The final design of the LSA flag, which is largely like it's like cemented now, like it's going to be the one. It's going to be a red flag. It's going to be like a maroon or reddish flag background with silver. With everything else on the flag is going to be silver. It's going to have LSA in the middle of it in Inlander font, so you can find that if you want. It's going to be an Inlander font, and then it's going to have on one side of it a honey badger, like reared up, like it's a. You know, if y'all know what I'm talking about, it's kind of like a normal crest that you would find in Europe where the animals are like reared up to the sides. It's going to have a honey badger on one side, like a actually anatomically correct honey badger. Not the super cute, cool one that we have, but it'll be a really realistic looking one. And then we'll also have a line on the other one because our family actually has a crest. And it has a line on it. Matthew might not know that, but because like
I do.
Oh, you did? Oh no, I knew. I'm not going to say the name of the house, but it's actually a European house, which is really cool. They were the founders.
The House of Mog.
We're not saying the real name. Like people get doxed us with that info because like that family is like known for that like crest. It didn't last long. It was only like a 250-year long dynasty that doesn't exist anymore. But I still think it's really cool, and it would be neat to have a little reference to that on it. So there will be a line, there will be a honey badger, and then behind that there will either be like some kind of like an oak leaf like flourish behind the two of them, and then a little thing at the bottom that also flattens it out, makes it look kind of nice. And also the idea of that certain kind of like LSA like symbol being on the red banner, not a communist banner, by the way. I don't want it to be like red banner like a communist, because we're not communists. But that symbol can also be used as like a seal on letters. We'll be trying to find out all kinds of ways to use that, but it will become like the official symbol of the Leaf Spring Army. Like hell, it'll become cat badges, anything. Like anything you can imagine, we're going to be turning that symbol into it. So it'll be pretty cool looking.
We don't want a flag that looks like oh
no, we don't want that. The first one kind of did end up looking like that, you know, and so it had to go back to the design board. But with that, I thank you for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well and give everyone kind of a better idea of what it might look like. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Stefan Bentis, who puts in a 5 and says Germany was the main beneficiary of trading with Russia, so they should be the main contributors of common security, and they should pay more than their little 2%.
Oh no, we can't go and punish NATO members for actions. The Germans didn't know. Like some people did know, but the German government didn't really have a good idea of what was going to be happening in 6 years' time. And I don't, like, you know, and I get it. You know, some people were saying it back in the day that it was going to happen this way, and they didn't listen. But we can't go and punish people for that. Now all we can do is say, see, we were right. And now the Germans go, oh, yes, you were right. We were never doing that again, hopefully. And I just honestly think we just need to get everyone up above that 2% GDP spending quota. That's all. I don't believe in punishing members. Every member is the same. Every member makes mistakes. No reason to go around beating people over the head because, you know, if every member got beat over the head for making mistakes, you know, while I think America's a great country, we would be beat over the head a pretty good bit. We do make mistakes. And I just think it would be great to have everyone over quota. That's all. And so with that, thank you once again for the support. And I hope that does address that fairly well in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a 2 from Sarah, who says, can you talk 810th fail / RF murd of RF troop? 1 survive.
And thank you for the support. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to declare ignorance on that one because I don't really know about that exact topic, but I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Longhorn13, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much for that support, and there's no comment to address. And with that being said, we are moving on to our live chat questions. And up first, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream. We have Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, Tight Lines LSO. They said this is coming along the way, and here's the thing, they are going to stay.
The U.S. is coming along the way, and here's the thing they're going to stay. It was supposed to be like a rhyme, and then it ended up sounding like a third grader rhyme, but that's the sound of money. And you all got that dead on the nail.
I hear money.
Oh man, I hear the money. Oh man, here comes the money. By the way, ask him for his 1099. Ask him. Do it. Oh God. But anyways, y'all did get that right on the nail, and I got to congratulate y'all for doing that for the 562nd day in a row. Y'all did it again and got it right the first time. It always blows me away. I bet it blows everyone else away too. A lot of people just don't say it anymore. But with that, we are on to the live chat questions. And due to time constraints, because usually these streams only last 2.5 hours now, and it's now 3 hours and 15 minutes, we're only going to be getting to 5 live chats tonight. And so with that, we are on to the first one.
And we'll actually be getting to 4 because it's all I have.
Oh.
So this one goes to Jose.
I'm gone.
This one goes to Jose. This one goes to Jose Diaz, who says, "Is Turkey yay letting NATO ships go through the Bosphorus?"
And hello to the Commandant of Puerto Rico of the LSA. And to answer your question, it appears so. That's why we're going to be seeing some U.S. ships involved in an exercise in Romanian and Ukrainian waters here in the future. So from what we understand, they are now letting the U.S. through. We don't know about other countries. It appears to just be U.S. exclusive at the moment until we get other information. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also great to hear that the Commandant of Puerto Rico was on tonight. And I hope you've been having a good time tonight, Commandant. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to John O, who says, "Do you think this NATO exercise is covering for something else, or is it as stated?"
Oh, it is as stated. Usually the exercises are very straightforward in concept. Like war games in South Korea. Most war games aren't really hiding anything. There's very few instances where they are, like the Russian quote-unquote war game that started the invasion of Ukraine. That was an exception to the norm. About 95% of the time, you just see war games being war games trying to send messages, although they're always considered to be that small, like 5% chance that it's actually going to start a war. So this is really all its aim will be is to show the Russians the U.S. will go riding right up to your territorial waters, and it will just sit there and do whatever it wants, and there's really nothing the Russians will do about it because they're going to be scared to respond. So with that, I hope that answers that fairly well, at least in my opinion from how I'm seeing it. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Carl, who says, "Do you think the Ukrainian border will look like the DMZ after the fighting stops?"
No, I don't actually think it will, because the border is so long. It's I believe 800 miles long if we actually measured it out, that it's just too much border to cover. With a country like Korea, the population density is so thick, especially in South Korea, that a demilitarized zone that's about 58 miles long can be supported because there's enough armed forces on both sides due to the population size and economic activity of at least one of them, that it is entirely possible. And then North Korea may not have the economic activity, but it has the guns, so then it also mans the border as well. So while it's possible on a short border with a high population density, it's not going to be possible in Ukraine because you have two countries that have considerably lower population density for their land size than the Koreas, and not only that, the border is extremely long. You would have to create a DMZ over 800 straight miles, which just would physically be way too much for any one country to handle, including a country like the United States. Having your army on that border constantly would soak up your army's ability to do literally anything else. Everyone would be involved in guarding that border. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. In my opinion, I think the border will largely return to what it was before the war, but you'll probably see more militarized checkpoints along the border for some time, but it won't be any DMZ. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And this question goes to Richard Rohde, who says, "Could the U.S. fund a military comm satellite for Ukraine and put it into orbit?"
Oh, sir.
And yes, we can. We print that money. We can find the money if we need to.
Dude, we sit there and go, "Oh, money, Fed, print," and then they just start printing. But anyways, yes, we could.
Hey, Jerome, turn on that money printer, boy.
Man,
yes, sir.
Man, during the plague, we sat there and literally put out news articles on like websites like ABC saying, "Hey guys, the government just came up with a new fiscal theory. Just print the money." And we were all like, "What? Wait a minute, hold up."
But
like,
what about the gold? Where's the gold?
Screw the gold.
Screw the gold. But start typing in fake numbers into the computer. Nobody will ever know the difference.
And then Bricks, dude, Bricks sits there and goes now, "Oh, look, we're going to make a currency that will supplant the dollar." And then, like, the U.S., like, did you know this, Matthew, that all of the Chinese banks that have been lending those predatory loans in East Africa and Central Asia actually back their crap with the dollar, not the yuan?
I didn't know that, but did you know this? You know why it's really called BRICS? Not because it's the names of the countries or anything like that. Do you know why?
Because they're dumb as bricks.
No, that is actually a pretty good explanation, but it's not really that. Because, you know, is North Korea part of BRICS?
No, it's just it's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa.
Aha, but see, though, North Korea wants to join BRICS. You know why they want to join BRICS?
Why?
Because how does North Korea make their money?
Let's see, prostitution, coal, nuclear weapons, arms dealing, nefarious gambling operations,
because they sell bricks.
Oh,
that was such a good one.
Oh my god! Dude, I'm honestly blown away. That was the best one ever, man.
Crazy.
Honestly, man, I gotta say that was so good. Ham hung. Honestly, 100% ham hung.
The hell are you talking about?
I don't even know, man. I just had.
Oh, you mean the name of the city?
Yeah, man. The hell are you talking about?
What'd you say? I don't know what you meant.
But man, I gotta be honest with you, man. Like, dude, I'm just saying this is satire, by the way, y'all. This is not a real thing. But I'm gonna create a gang on the south side. I'm gonna call this thing Pyong Gang. Oh man, what is this place?
I don't call it that.
Dude, we were on the final question, and now we were just like almost filibustering at this point. But oh my god, wow, dang, that looks brutal, man. This is literally like the 18th century. Dang, there's no
yeah, I mean, I've seen places in Mississippi that look like that.
Well, that's Mississippi. They're kind of like an exception, you know? Like, they're kind of, we all know they're an exception to the whole rule, but good God, man, this is rough. Like, that's pretty rough right there. Oh, look, it's the local government office. They got like a little barbed wire fence around it. It's something like, dude, apparently local government isn't appreciated that much here in Pyongyang. But nevertheless, what the hell was the last question of the night? Like, what in the world were we even on?
I can't remember anymore. I was in the live chat. I didn't write it down.
Oh my lord, man! I hate that we completely forgot the live chat, but we were having a good time right there. And I thank you so much for sacrificing your live chat for us to all have a good joke around on North Korea. I don't even know why we were doing that at this point, but still, thank you so much for throwing in the final question. I hope that we somehow address that in addressing North Korea. But nevertheless, thank you all so much once again for watching. It is the end of tonight's stream. I've absolutely enjoyed running this stream again. I enjoy it every single night, not because of the content we cover, but because of the amazing folks that are here with us every single night while we cover this news, and that is you watching this video right now. If y'all enjoyed, please make sure to subscribe, make sure to hit the like button, make sure to comment, make sure to share this with your friends, your family, everyone you know. Be like us during orientation at law school. Just tell everybody about this channel. It would help us out significantly in being able to spread the word and help people know about what we do and how we cover the news. And of course, we run this 6 days a week, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, every single night. There is always a live stream running except for Monday. We also run daily short war summaries almost every day of the week. We can't guarantee 7-day coverage on that, though, because sometimes there just isn't enough news at that point in the day when those videos are supposed to be going out, or we may not have the time to even make them some days because we are that busy, just waking up at like 6 in the morning and then going till 1 at night, and there's no time in between. But nevertheless, I thank every single one of y'all so much for watching, and of course, good night, good luck, stay safe, take care, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army never dies.
And good night, LSA. Thank you all for another great stream. We'll see you tomorrow night. And Pyongyang, Slava Ukraine.
Man,
Yes. The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards